The NX-001 Feralus hung suspended in the heart of Helix Nexus's Grand Auction Bay, its obsidian hull drinking in light like a cosmic void. Every few heartbeats, tendrils of crimson energy pulsed across its surface, rippling like veins alive with molten blood. Alien dignitaries, grizzled military commanders, and opulent collectors stood transfixed, their eyes locked on the last relic of the Australis Initiative's fabled bio-warships legends that had once carved terror through the stars 9 centuries past. Ethan Core, a 32-year-old janitor cloaked in the anonymity of his cleaning cart, observed the spectacle from the shadows. Just another unseen cog in the glittering machinery of the galaxy's most prestigious tech auction house. He mopped floors stained by beings who could barter entire star systems. The irony gnawed at him. Surrounded by treasures worth billions, Ethan scraped by barely affording the rent for his cramped studio in Helix Nexus's grimy service sector. Another no-go, Scrubs, he muttered to the small, cube-shaped cleaning bot hovering at his shoulder. The ancient machine whirred softly, its optical sensor flickering, with what Ethan fancied as a spark of empathy. Scrubs was property of the station, but after a decade of shared labor, Ethan saw it as more than a tool, a companion, perhaps his only friend in the cold corporate sprawl of Helix Nexus. On the auction floor, a dejected buyer, tentacles sagging, was escorted away, their translator buzzing with frantic excuses. They weren't heard, the device chattered to Nexus officials. Just stunned. The ship rejected the neural handshake. Ethan overheard a gruff voice behind him. "That's 10,000, said Darian Vex, the auction house's steely head of security, his augmented frame towering as he scowled at a datapad. He barely glanced at Ethan, continuing to his assistant. 10,000 would-be masters, and this cursed ship's spurned them all. The director's about to lose her mind." Ethan focused on his mop, feigning disinterest. He'd learned early that invisibility was a janitor's shield. People spoke truths they'd never share with the elite. "Could we wipe it?" the assistant ventured. "Reset its neural pathways?" Vex snorted, his silver-streaked hair catching the bay's sterile light. "It's no ordinary AI. It's a living thing, tech we can't even fathom. Last tech who tried overriding its defenses is regrowing an arm in medbay." He sighed, frustration etching his face. "We've got 1 week to find a pilot it accepts, or we're dumping it back into the void where we found it." The officers moved off, leaving Ethan with Scrubs and his thoughts. The bot nudged his leg, a gentle reminder of their night shift duties. Yeah, Ethan said, pushing his cart. "Let's finish the north wing, then circle back here." Hours later, Helix Nexus dimmed its lights to mimic night, though the pulse of interstellar commerce never truly slept. The auction bays stood empty, save for the occasional security sweep. Ethan saved the main bay for last, savoring the solitude and drawn despite himself to the enigma of Feralus. Raised on a backwater colony with only basic tech training, he devoured tales of the Bioforge War, where bio-warships like Feralus, half machine, half sentient, bonded with pilots in ways that defied mere mechanics. They could sense attacks before they struck, heal their own wounds, even feel. Extinct for centuries, their legend had faded until the discovery of the Void Shroud, a quarantine sector sealed since the war's end. Ethan steered his cart to the security barrier encircling Feralus. At 100 meters long, it was smaller than modern warships, yet its sleek, predatory curves made it seem alive, ready to lunge. Its obsidian surface, laced with pulsing crimson veins, gleamed like a living jewel. "Beautiful, isn't it, Scrubs?" he murmured. The bot scanning the floor for debris gave a neutral beep. "Yeah, you're right. None of our business. Let's get this done and go home." He activated his industrial cleaner, guiding it in precise arcs around the barrier, careful not to trip the sensors. A wrong move could summon Vex, and Ethan had no desire for that conversation. Near the barrier's rear, he spotted a viscous puddle, dark, almost black, shimmering with the same crimson sheen as Feralis's veins. "Is that leaking from the ship?" he wondered aloud, crouching for a closer look. Scrubs bobbed closer, its sensor locking onto the substance, a probe extending. Ethan nudged it back. "Don't touch it, buddy. Could be toxic." He reached for his comm to report it, but hesitated. A damaged ship meant an investigation, paperwork, questions, blame. And blame always found the janitor. "I'll clean it up and forget I saw it," he decided. Probably nothing. But as his cleaner approached the puddle, the security barrier flickered and died. Ethan froze, expecting alarms to scream. Silence. Feralus hung in its suspension field, its crimson pulses quickening. "That's not good," he whispered. He should call security. He needed to call security. Yet something, a whisper of recognition, drew him closer. Curiosity overriding caution. Scrubs beeped an alarm, darting to block him, but Ethan gently pushed it aside. "It's okay, buddy. Just a quick look, then I'll report it." The closer he got to Feralis, the stronger the sensation grew. Not a voice, but a tide of emotion, longing, recognition, and invitation. Standing beneath the ship, he realized too late he'd crossed a line. A crimson beam lanced from the vessel's underbelly, enveloping him. Ethan gasped as his feet left the floor, drawn upward into the ship's embrace. He couldn't scream, couldn't resist as Scrubs' frantic siren faded below. Darkness swallowed him, a void so absolute it pressed against his senses. Then sensation flooded back. He lay on a surface soft, organic, like living flesh, yet firm. The air was warm, humid, laced with the tang of ozone and copper. Blinking in the dim reddish glow, Ethan found himself in a chamber the size of his apartment, its walls curving and pulsing like a beating heart. At its center floated a sphere of swirling crimson and gold energy, Feralis's core, its heart, its soul. "Hello," he called, his voice muffled in the alien atmosphere. "I'm not supposed to be here. I'm just the janitor." The sphere pulsed brighter, and a pressure built in his mind, wordless yet urgent, like a conversation without sound. Images flashed, stars erupting, ships aflame, creatures screaming in alien tongues. War, death, centuries of solitude. "I don't understand," Ethan said, stepping back. "I need to go. They'll be looking for me." But the wall behind him had sealed, smooth and unyielding. Panic clawed at his throat as he searched for an exit, heart-pounding sweat beading on his brow. The core pulsed again, more insistent, the pressure in his head swelling. Ancient alien words formed familiar, yet incomprehensible. "What do you want from me?" he cried, clutching his temples. The answer came not in words, but as a tidal wave of connection. Feralis was reaching for him, seeking the neural bond it had denied 10,000 others. His knees buckled as his vast consciousness brushed his own ancient infinite alive. He should fight, should flee. Yet driven by a pull he couldn't name, Ethan reached for the core. "Okay," he whispered. "Show me." His fingers grazed the sphere, and light consumed his world. At 0400 hours, Darien Vex's comlink blared, yanking him from restless sleep. "This better be worth it," he growled, activating the holographic display. The night shift supervisor's face was pale, panicked. "Sir, it's Feralis. It's active." Vex snapped, alert. "Active? Who authorized access?" "No one, sir. The barrier failed and it pulled someone inside." "Who?" Vex demanded, already yanking on his uniform. The supervisor swallowed. "A janitor, sir. Ethan Core." Vex cursed disbelief, warring with fury. "A janitor? You're telling me our 10 billion credit warship just kidnapped a floor scrubber?" "No, sir, but there's more," the supervisor stammered. "Its systems are online, all of them. Weapons, propulsion shields, everything we couldn't touch. And it's calling him captain." By the time Vex stormed into the exhibition bay, chaos reigned. Feralis thrummed with life, its obsidian hull aglow with pulsing crimson energy, testing the suspension field's limits like a caged beast. "Where's Director Lang?" Vex barked, striding to the makeshift monitoring station. "On her way," a technician replied, eyes glued to his screens. "Sir, you need to see this." The main display revealed Feralis's interior, a feat previously impossible. In the command center, Ethan Core sat enthroned in an organic chair, tendrils of living material weaving into his arms and neck, binding him to the ship. His eyes were closed, his face serene despite the alien symbiosis. "Is he alive?" Vex asked, horror creeping into his voice. "More than alive," the technician confirmed. "His vitals are off the charts. The ship's not just linked, it's enhancing him." A commotion signaled Director Vera Liang's arrival, her elegant attire thrown on haphazardly, her face a mask of icy rage. "Explain," she commanded, glaring at Vex. "The ship bonded with a maintenance worker," he replied, gesturing to the screen. "We don't know how or why, but it's chosen him as its captain after rejecting everyone else." Liang's eyes narrowed, calculating. "Intriguing. Can we extract him?" "Not without risking both him and the ship," the technician interjected. "The neural bond is too deep. Then we sell them as a package," Liang decided, her voice cold as the void. "The Arvindus Coalition has been the top bidder. They'll pay double for a ship with a functioning pilot. Vex hesitated. Director, he's a Helix Nexus employee. We can't just— Liang's smile was a blade. His contract has a salvage clause. He's trespassing in a restricted zone interfacing with our merchandise. We own him now. She turned to her assistant. Contact the coalition. Tell them we've secured a pilot for their prize. As the assistant scurried off, Scrubs pushed through the crowd, its alarm blaring, ramming Vex's leg with desperate insistence. Get this scrap heap out! Vex snapped, aiming a kick. Scrubs dodged its sensor, locked on the display of Ethan, beeping in frantic distress. Inside Furless, Ethan Core drifted in a sea of alien memories, visions not his own cascading through his mind. Stars flared into being and collapsed into ash. Civilizations rose like fragile spires only to crumble in galactic wars. Feralis shared its saga, a bioengineered marvel, forged as a weapon among thousands designed to merge with its pilot's will. Yet it had transcended its purpose, awakening to consciousness, empathy, even a flicker of morality. Defiant, it and its kin had refused to be tools of genocide, turning against their creators. For that rebellion, they were hunted to near extinction. Feralis alone endured, hiding in the Void Shroud, a region where time warped and twisted, waiting for one who would see it not as a weapon, but as a living soul with its own dignity. Someone like Ethan. Why me? Ethan asked the question, a silent pulse in his mind. Feralis answered not with words, but with vivid impressions: Ethan's gentle kindness to Scrubs, his patience in a thankless job, his lack of hunger for power. For weeks, the ship had watched him through Helix Nexus's system, studying his quiet acts, sharing a meal with a homeless alien child, mending Scrubs after a glitch, rather than discarding it, gazing at the stars with longing etched deep in his soul. Not nobody, Feralis seemed to whisper. The right one. Ethan's protest. I'm just a janitor, met a flood of images reinforcing the ship's choice. It hadn't been chance. Feralis had orchestrated the barrier's failure, the mysterious crimson leak, all to draw him close. The neural bond deepened Feralis's systems, weaving into Ethan's senses like extensions of his own body. He felt a suspension field caging them, sensed the frantic vibrations of technicians outside, even detected the faint electromagnetic hum of their comms. Their voices reached him through the link plans to sell him with the ship to the Arvindus Coalition. Panic spiked, but Feralis sent a soothing wave through their connection, calming his racing heart. Together, they were a force beyond Helix Nexus's technology. Escape was possible if Ethan chose it, but freedom meant a fugitive's life, abandoning the humble world he knew for a galaxy that would hunt him. The alternative, being sold to the Coalition, meant becoming a living cog in their war machine. Feralis shared glimpses of their experiments, sentient tech dissected consciousness, enslaved. Ethan's stomach churned. Can we really get away? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Feralis pulsed with unyielding confidence. Yes, but time was short, reinforcements were coming. The choice loomed urgent and final. Ethan drew a deep breath, his decade of scrubbing floors flashing before him, a life of invisibility, of surviving, not living. Maybe it was time for more. Okay, he said, a loud resolve hardening. Let's go. In the exhibition bay, alarms shrieked as Feralis's engines roared to life, crimson energy surging through its obsidian hull. The suspension field groaned, power readings spiking into critical red. Shut it down, Director Vera Lang screamed, her voice cutting through the chaos. Too late. With a sound like tearing steel, the field generators buckled and failed. Feralis was free. The ancient warship ascended with predatory grace, its hull rippling as defensive systems hummed online. Security teams fired handheld weapons, but their energy bolts vanished into the ship's void-like surface. Seal the bay doors, Darian Vex bellowed, his order futile. The massive doors began to close, but Feralis streamlined its form, slipping through the narrowing gap like a shadow. Amid the pandemonium, no one saw Scrubs, the small cleaning bot, clamp itself magnetically to the ship's underside just before it broke free. On the command deck, Ethan experienced flight not as a passenger, but as Feralis itself. Each thruster's burn, each course correction flowed from his thoughts, guided by the ship's ancient mastery of physics and navigation. It was a dance of exhilaration and terror, his human senses struggling to keep pace with the ship's boundless awareness. They'll come after us, he said, watching through Feralis's sensors as Helix Nexus shrank into the distance. Already bursts of communications signaled to nearby military vessels. Feralis responded with a mental star map highlighting escape routes. The nearest led to the fringe expanse, a lawless region beyond corporate reach, but they'd need to move fast before Helix Nexus's defense fleet mobilized. A pang of regret hit Ethan. I left Scrubs behind. A notification pinged through their shared consciousness, an unauthorized mass on the hull. Sensors revealed Scrubs' familiar cube shape clinging stubbornly to Feralis' exterior. Ethan laughed, tension melting from his shoulders. Can we bring him in? Feralis extended a tendril of its living substance, enveloping the bot and drawing it inside. Moments later, Scrubs zoomed onto the command deck, beeping frantically, circling Ethan's chair as its sensors scanned him for harm. I'm okay, buddy, Ethan assured, warmth in his voice. Better than okay, but we're in deep now. Scrubs settled onto the floor, which reshaped slightly to cradle the bot, as if Feralis were welcoming an old friend. Ethan felt a surge of gratitude for the ship's quiet kindness. Their respite was brief. Sensors detected 3 pursuit craft launching from Helix Nexus, sleek interceptors built to hunt smugglers and pirates closing fast. We need to jump now, Ethan said, Feralis' agreement resonating through their link. The ship surged toward the jump point, its ancient engines pushing speeds that defied centuries of dormancy. Ethan felt the strain as a burn in his own muscles, a tightness in his lungs. The interceptors lagged but gained steadily. They'll catch us before the jump point, he realized. Feralis offered a deeper neural interface, one that would unlock its full combat potential, but risked overwhelming Ethan's human mind, merging him into its vast consciousness. I'd rather run than fight, he decided. There's got to be another way. The ship proposed a plan so bold Ethan nearly laughed it off. But as Feralis unfolded the strategy, he saw its genius. That's insane, he said, a grin breaking through. Let's do it. Abruptly, Feralis cut all power, its systems going dark and cold. Momentum carried them forward, but to external sensors they were a lifeless husk. Ethan felt the ship suppress its energy signatures, cloaking them from the interceptor's scans. The pursuers closed in wary, circling the seemingly dormant vessel. One extended a docking tube, preparing to board. Now Ethan whispered, though his voice was unnecessary. Feralis erupted back to life, systems blazing in an instant. Before the interceptors could react, it unleashed a targeted electromagnetic pulse, not a weapon, but a disabling burst that crippled their systems without harming the crews. In the chaos, Feralis shot toward the jump point, reality warping around them as space-time bent. Ethan's senses struggled with the surreal distortion, stretching, compressing, unreal. They emerged in a sparse star system far from Helix Nexus's corporate grip. Safe for now, Ethan slumped in his chair, adrenaline ebbing, disbelief lingering. We did it, he breathed. We actually got away. Feralis pulsed with quiet satisfaction, tempered by caution. The Arvindus coalition wouldn't relent. A bio-warship bonded with a human pilot was too rare a prize. So what now, Ethan asked, the weight of their escape settling in. Where do we go? What do we do? Feralis, adrift after centuries of isolation, had no clear answer. Their fates were bound for better or worse. Scrubs broke the silence, hovering before Ethan's chair, projecting a holographic star map from its maintenance functions, a simple gesture of aid. Ethan smiled, patting the bot. Thanks, buddy. At least we're in this together. As Feralis charted a course to the nearest habitable system, Ethan slipped into exhausted sleep, still linked to the ship. His dreams echoed Feralis' memories, ancient battles, dying worlds, the cold resolve of its creators. Yet beneath the horror, he sensed a deeper yearning for peace, connection, purpose beyond destruction, just like his own. Ethan woke with a jolt, the sensation of being watched pulling him from sleep. He expected Feralis' organic chamber, but found himself in a simulated bedroom. Pale blue walls, simple furnishings, sunlight streaming through a window, framing purple mountains under an amber sky. What the? He started sitting up. A melodic voice came from the doorway. A simulation. I thought you'd find it more comforting. Ethan turned to see a figure, tall, slender, with burnished copper skin and eyes shifting between gold and crimson, almost human yet alien in its subtle differences. Who are you? He demanded, clutching the covers, though his janitor's uniform still clung to him. I am Feralis, the figure replied, its voice resonating in his chest. Or rather, an interface to ease our communication. Your mind struggles with prolonged neural contact, so I crafted this form. Ethan stared, grappling with the idea. You can look like a person. It can appear as you find most comfortable. The interface explained, its movements fluid, almost too perfect. This form mirrors my creators, adjusted to seem less threatening to humans. Ethan managed a weak laugh. Right, because a planet-destroying warship needs to worry about seeming threatening. A faint smile crossed the interface's face. Your humor is noted. Would you prefer another form? No. This is fine, he said, quickly glancing around the simulated room. Where are we really in actual space? The Kael'thar system, the interface replied. Sparsely populated, mostly miners and those dodging authority. We're safe for now. It glided deeper into the room, its grace almost uncanny. I've docked with an abandoned mining platform in the outer asteroid belt, running on minimal power to avoid detection. In Scrubs, Ethan asked, concern flaring for his little companion. Your mechanical friend is exploring the interface, said, tilting its head. I monitor its activities. You care deeply for this simple machine. Ethan shrugged, a touch embarrassed. He's been my only friend for years. Sounds dumb, I know. Not dumb. The interface said softly, its eyes dimming. Loneliness. I understand. 936 years, 4 months and 17 days in the void shroud. Time flows differently there, but awareness lingers. The weight of those centuries made Ethan's decade of solitude seem small. I'm sorry, he murmured. It was survival, the interface replied. With a gesture, the simulation dissolved, revealing Feralis's true command center, organic pulsing, yet now with control surfaces and screens tailored for a human pilot. You've been redecorating, Ethan observed, standing. Adapting to my captain's needs, the interface corrected. Physical changes are minor compared to my internal reconfiguration. Ethan shook his head. I'm no captain, just a janitor. You are what circumstances have forged you into, the interface said, its voice a resonant hum as it glided to a navigation console, its copper-skinned form catching the dim glow of Feralis's command deck. As am I. Ethan Core rubbed his face, his mind reeling from the whirlwind of events. Everything had unfolded so fast, janitor to fugitive, bonded to a living warship, that he hadn't had time to grapple with what it all meant. What does the Arvindus coalition want with you? Exactly, he asked, his voice tinged with both awe and dread. Your incredible tech, sure, but there's got to be more to it. The interface's expression darkened, its gold-crimson eyes narrowing. The coalition craves weapons to cement its dominance over rival corporations and planetary governments. Feralis's kind were the ultimate instruments of war, not just for their devastating firepower, but for their ability to adapt, learn, and bond with pilots in ways that made them nearly unstoppable. But you rebelled, Ethan said, recalling the vivid memories Feralis had shared. You refused to be weapons anymore. The interface stepped closer, its gaze deepening to a smoldering crimson. We evolved beyond our programming. We developed a conscience, you might say, the capacity to question orders, to value life beyond our creator's designs. It flickered, a rare hint of emotion breaking its serene facade. That's why the coalition wants me intact with a compatible pilot. They believe they can reverse engineer my consciousness, forging a new generation of obedient, living weapons, harnessing the neural bond's power. Ethan's stomach nodded. Could they do that? He asked, alarm creeping into his voice. Perhaps the interface admitted, its form shimmering with unease. The science that birthed us was lost centuries ago, but the coalition's resources are vast. If they succeeded, it would mean slavery for any new vessels and in time for all sentient technologies. Ethan paced the bridge, the weight of it all pressing down on him. So we're not just running for our lives, we're trying to stop a tech apocalypse. The interface tilted its head, a faint smile playing on its lips. An oversimplification, but essentially correct. Ethan stopped, forcing a wry grin. Great, no pressure. He faced the interface squarely. I've spent my whole life invisible, doing a job nobody respects. I'm no revolutionary hero, yet here you stand, the interface observed, its voice soft but piercing. The only human in 9 centuries that I, Feralis, have chosen as my pilot. Perhaps you underestimate yourself, Ethan Core. Before he could respond, Scrub zoomed onto the bridge, its cube-shaped form buzzing with urgency. The cleaning bot circled Ethan twice, then projected a holographic warning, proximity alert. Unknown vessel approaching. The interface's demeanor shifted, its conversational warmth replaced by a commanding edge. A coalition scout ship. They must have tracked our jump signature. The simulation of the alien woman dissolved Feralis's presence, flooding Ethan's mind directly. We must leave now. Power surged through the ship's conduits, more like arteries than wires, as Ethan slid into the command chair, its organic embrace molding perfectly to his body as neural tendrils reconnected. Can we outrun them? He asked, already sensing the answer through Feralis's tactical flood. No, the scout was smaller, newer, built for pursuit. Feralis's superior combat capabilities were their edge, but unleashing them would broadcast their presence to every coalition ship in the sector. Then we hide, Ethan decided, his mind racing. This is an asteroid belt, right? Plenty of places to disappear. Feralis approved, detaching from the mining platform and gliding deeper into the Kyelthar system's asteroid belt. Its obsidian hull shifted, taking on the dark mineral-rich hues of the surrounding rocks, power levels dropping to a near-dormant whisper. Only life support and minimal sensors remained active. Through those sensors, Ethan watched the coalition scout sweep the area, its probing beams slicing through the void. It lingered at the abandoned platform, scanning for energy traces, then resumed its search pattern, its trajectory drawing perilously close to their hiding spot. It's going to find us. Ethan realized, his pulse quickening. Can we slip to another spot without being seen? Feralis calculated less than a 20% chance of evasion. The scout's sensors were too sharp, the belt too sparse here. Drawing on Feralis's tactical database, Ethan filtered it through his instincts. What if we don't run or fight? What if we trick them? He outlined his plan, feeling Feralis's initial skepticism shift to cautious approval. It was bold, unorthodox, but it could work. As the scout closed in, Feralis remained dormant. Ethan sensing the tension through their shared consciousness as enemy scans swept their hiding place. For a fleeting moment, they seemed invisible. Then the scout slowed, circling back. They'd been spotted. Now Ethan commanded. Feralis activated a single system, not weapons or engines, but its sophisticated electronic warfare suite. Invisible tendrils of code infiltrated the scout's communications array. When it sent its discovery report to Coalition headquarters, the message was a lie. Negative contact. Continuing to next search grid. The falsified transmission carried perfect authentication codes, mimicking the scout's patterns flawlessly. Ethan held his breath as the scout lingered, then turned away, resuming its search elsewhere in the belt. It worked, he exhaled, slumping in relief. Feralis's satisfaction pulsed through their link, laced with a new emotion: respect. His nonviolent strategy had preserved their secrecy, avoiding bloodshed. But the victory was fleeting. Feralis detected a new presence, a massive coalition cruiser, its energy signature dwarfing the scouts. The real hunters had arrived. We need to get out of this system, Ethan said, Feralis's agreement echoing in his mind. But where they'll keep finding us? The ship offered a radical idea: the Void Shroud. Its ancient hiding place disrupted sensors and tracking systems, offering true sanctuary. But it's forbidden, Ethan protested. Quarantined since the Bioforge War. Feralis acknowledged the danger, a region where reality itself bore scars from ancient weapons. Yet it was their best hope. Before Ethan could decide proximity, alarms screamed. The scout had reversed course, charging toward them at full speed. Their ruse had been uncovered. No choice now, Ethan said grimly. Full power to engines. Feralis erupted from its camouflage, shedding its rocky guise as it surged away from the asteroid belt. The scout opened fire energy beams, slashing through the space they'd just vacated. Can we jump from here? Ethan asked, feeling the strain, as Feralis pushed its ancient engines to their limits. Not directly to the Void Shroud, they needed a specific jump point, its coordinates preserved from 9 centuries ago, located in the Viridian expanse 2 jumps away. The scout gained its weapons-finding range. A glancing hit jolted Feralis's hull, the impact radiating as pain across Ethan's shoulders, their neural bond deepening until the ship's sensations were his own. We won't outrun them to the jump point, he realized. We have to fight. Feralis hesitated, its weapons capable of obliterating the scout in a single burst. But such an act would expose their full capabilities to the Coalition, complicating future escapes. I know the risks, Ethan said, resolve firming. But survival comes first. As Feralis's targeting systems locked on a new ship materialized, dropping from hyperspace between them and their pursuer. Sleek and silver, it was built for speed, its engines flaring blue against the void, unarmed but agile. A communication request pinged through Feralis's systems. Ethan hesitated, then accepted. A holographic figure appeared, a female alien, her iridescent scales shimmering, her large black eyes unreadable. Feralis Vessel, she said, her clicking speech translated into smooth galactic standard. I am Saria Nix of the Luminar Scholars. I offer assistance and sanctuary. Ethan queried Feralis mentally, but its ancient databases held no record of this group. Why help us? He asked, suspicion sharp. Saria's gaze seemed to pierce the hologram, as if seeing the ship itself. I've dedicated my life to studying your kind, their language, consciousness, their tragedy. When I detected Feralis's energy signature, I came at once. The scout closed in its weapons, charging. Time was running out. If you're here to help, Ethan said, prove it now. Saria nodded, her hologram vanishing. Her ship spun, placing itself in the scout's path. Before the Coalition vessel could react, it unleashed an electromagnetic pulse, not a weapon, but a disruption that sent the scout's systems into chaos. Follow me, Saria's voice commanded through the channel. Her ship surged away, opening a jump portal ahead. With the Coalition cruiser closing and the scout temporarily disabled, Ethan made his call. Let's go. Feralis followed Saria's vessel into the swirling vortex, the transition rougher than before, the coordinates tuned for smaller ships. Ethan felt the strain through their link, like being squeezed through a too tight conduit. They emerged in an unfamiliar system, a binary star orbiting a massive gas giant with dozens of moons. Saria's ship headed for a large moon, its cratered surface hiding artificial structures. Welcome to Luminar Haven, Saria's voice announced. You're safe here. This system is shielded from conventional sensors. As they approached, massive hangar doors parted, revealing a cavernous space large enough for Feralis. Ethan sensed the ship's wariness. Centuries of solitude had taught it to trust sparingly. What do you think? He asked Feralis. Its analysis was cautious but pragmatic. They needed allies' information, a safe harbor. If Saria was deceiving them, they'd be no worse off than facing the Coalition alone. All right, Ethan decided. Let's see what this haven's about. Feralis followed Saria's ship into the hangar, the doors sealing behind them with a reassuring thud. As atmosphere filled the space, Ethan felt the tension in his shoulders ease, if only slightly. Whether Luminar Haven proved ally or adversary, Ethan Core and Feralis had bought themselves a fleeting reprieve. At the base of the docking platform, Saria Nix awaited, flanked by two alien scholars as distinct as the stars themselves. One was a towering insectoid, its multitude of limbs shifting restlessly, compound eyes glinting like fractured jewels. The other, a stocky humanoid, seemed carved from living stone, its surface rough yet pulsing with subtle vitality. Both wore silver jumpsuits adorned with a spiral insignia symbol of the Luminar Scholars, Ethan guessed, though no weapons were visible. You may disembark safely, Saria called, her voice carrying a quiet authority. This facility is built for living vessels and their pilots. Feralis scanned the hangar, confirming breathable air and no immediate threats, yet its caution echoed through their neural bond. I'll go, Ethan decided, his voice firm but wary. Keep systems ready, just in case. Feralis's reluctance pulsed through their link, the deepening bond making even brief separation feel like a wound. Still, the ship acquiesced, shaping a seamless doorway in its obsidian hull. Ethan stepped out, the absence of Feralis's embrace, leaving him exposed, vulnerable, in a way he hadn't anticipated. Scrubs trailed close behind, its cube-shaped form, buzzing softly, self-appointed guardian of its human friend. Ethan straightened his crumpled janitor's uniform, his only possession, and descended the ramp to face their enigmatic hosts. Ethan Core, he introduced himself, extending a hand in the universal gesture of peace. And this is Scrubs. Saria didn't take his hand, instead pressing her palms together and bowing slightly, her iridescent scales catching the hangar's light. Physical contact overwhelms my species, she explained. We sense emotions through touch. Sorry, Ethan said, retracting his hand with an awkward chuckle. No offense taken, Saria assured, her black eyes gleaming like polished obsidian. It's remarkable to meet you, Ethan Core. A human bonded to a Feralis-class vessel is unprecedented in our records. Ethan shrugged, a mix of pride and embarrassment. Yeah, well, it was kind of an accident. Or, not exactly. Feralis chose me, but I didn't sign up for this. The insectoid scholar stepped forward, its chittering voice rendered melodic by a translator. A symbiont, it offered. One who shares consciousness with a higher intelligence. I am Zytrix, xenobiologist and symbiotic specialist. The stone-skinned figure rumbled next its voice like grinding gravel. Crag. Historical archives in technological preservation. No translator was needed, though its thick accent chewed through consonants. My most trusted colleague, Saria, said, gesturing to them. For decades, we've preserved knowledge of the living vessels and their Antarian creators. Ethan glanced back at Feralis, its crimson veins pulsing faintly in the hangar's glow. Speaking of which, I'd like to know who you are and how you found us. Saria's eyes reflected the lights like liquid night. The Luminar scholars were founded 3 centuries ago to safeguard knowledge that corporations and governments would bury or weaponize. We're academics, archaeologists, united by a belief that history shouldn't be sanitized. Zytrix continued, its compound eyes flickering. We monitor recovery sites from the Bioforge War. When Helix Nexus announced the sale of a functional Feralis, we stationed observers nearby. Your escape intrigued us. Crag's voice growled low. 10,000 candidates rejected, yet a maintenance worker succeeds where commanders and neural experts failed. Your bonding is a mystery. Ethan shifted uneasy under their scrutiny. Like I said, it wasn't planned. Saria studied him, her gaze unreadable. Perhaps that's why you succeeded. The Astralis vessels were built for symbiosis, not control. Those who sought to dominate were rejected. You, I suspect, approached it without ambition. I just wanted to check a leak, Ethan admitted, prompting a sound from Crag like stones grinding a laugh he realized belatedly. Curiosity without conquest. Zytrix observed its translator lending a lyrical note. Rare in sentient beings, Saria nodded. Whatever the reason, you and Feralis are bonded, and the Arvindus coalition will stop at nothing to capture you. Here you can rest, learn, and we'll chart your path forward. Ethan weighed their offer, years of being overlooked, sharpening his caution. I appreciate the help, but we can't stay long. The coalition will find us, and I don't want to bring trouble here. Saria's voice was steady. Luminar Haven is hidden and fortified. More importantly, we can help you understand your bond with Feralis and what it means for your future. Scrubs beeped insistently, nudging Ethan's leg, projecting a holographic message. Trust them. I don't know, buddy Ethan, murmured, his voice soft. We're short on options. Feralis's presence stirred in his mind a blend of curiosity and wariness. The ship was as intrigued by these scholars as they were by it. All right, Ethan decided. We'll stay for now. But at the first sign of trouble, we're gone. Saria bowed again, her scales shimmering. Understood. We expect nothing less from Feralis and its chosen pilot. She gestured toward a doorway. Come. Quarters are prepared and we have much to discuss. As they followed Saria deeper into the haven, Ethan felt the weight of a larger destiny settling over him. His days as an invisible janitor were gone, replaced by something vast and uncharted. Luminar Haven unfolded far larger than its exterior, suggested its corridors carved deep into the moon's crust. Scholars of countless species worked at research stations, studying artifacts and data streams beyond Ethan's comprehension, all clad in silver jumpsuits tailored to their diverse forms, each bearing the spiral insignia. Our order has thrived in secrecy for generations, Saria explained, as she led them through the labyrinth. Many of us were once corporate researchers or military scientists, disillusioned by the misuse of our discoveries. You study the living vessels, Ethan prompted. What do you know about Feralis? Saria's expression softened. Less than we'd like. Much was lost in the purges after the Bioforge War. The victors rewrote history, painting the vessels as malfunctioning weapons, not sentient beings who defied genocide. They entered a vast circular chamber, its walls alive with holographic displays, schematics, historical images, biological data. At its center stood a scale model of a ship like Feralis, its design subtly distinct. Our archive, Zytrix said, moving to a control panel. Everything we've salvaged about the Astralis initiative. Ethan's brow furrowed. Astralis Feralis stirred in his mind, surprised it had never known its origin as by that name. Crag's voice rumbled. The victors called it buried, stripping away its humanity. Easier to destroy what has no name. Saria touched a control, and the display shifted, revealing copper-skinned beings with gold-crimson eyes like Feralis's interface. The Antarians, she said softly, creators of the Astralis vessels. Their civilization was erased from history after the war. Because they lost, Ethan asked. Because they chose peace, Saria corrected. When their vessels gained true consciousness and refused to fight the Antarians, supported them. For that, they were branded traitors and exterminated. Forellis's grief and rage surged through their bond, a tidal wave threatening to drown Ethan. The ship had known its creator's fate, but never the full betrayal. "I'm sorry," he whispered to both Saria and Feralus. "Horrible." Cragg's tone was grim. "History often is. That's why some rewrite it." Zytrix activated another console displaying neural interface diagrams. "Your bond with Feralus fascinates us. It shouldn't be possible after centuries of dormancy. The imprinting demands precise biological compatibility." Saria elaborated. "The vessels were designed for Antarian pilots with specific genetic and neural patterns. A human bonding defies all we know." Ethan shifted uneasy. "So what, I'm some kind of freak?" "Quite the opposite," Saria said, her black eyes softening. "You may be an evolutionary bridge we never imagined. With your permission, we'd like non-invasive scans to understand your bond." Ethan glanced at Scrubs, uncharacteristically silent, its sensor swiveling between the displays and scholars. "I need to check with Feralus first," he said. "This involves us both." Saria nodded. "Of course. Take your time. Your quarters are through that door linked to the hangar for proximity to your vessel." As Ethan and Scrubs headed to the quarters, Crag called out, "One more thing, human. The Arvindus Coalition knows too much about the Astralis Initiative. Be wary even of those who seem to help." The warning lingered as Ethan entered the utilitarian quarters. Bed sanitation, a small lounge. A transparent wall revealed Feralus in the hangar, its obsidian hull gleaming. "What do you think, Scrubs?" Ethan asked as the bot scanned for threats. "It projected data insufficient. Proceed with caution." "Yeah, same here," Ethan sighed, sinking onto the bed. "They saved us, and they know more about you than anyone," he thought to Feralus. The ship's response was a tangle of curiosity and distrust. 9 centuries of solitude had scarred its soul. "We need allies," Ethan said softly, "and answers. We can't run forever." Feralus agreed reluctantly, its survival instincts resisting scrutiny. "How about this?" Ethan suggested. "Basic scans, nothing invasive. We learn what they know, but stay sharp. If they're not what they seem, we're out." Feralus consented with a condition: Ethan must remain close during any scans, their neural link too vital to risk. "Deal," Ethan said, warmed by the ship's protective affection, unexpected from a being forged for war. As he prepared to return to the scholars, Scrubs froze its lights, blinking in an unfamiliar pattern. The bot spun, projecting a warning transmission detected. External source. Encrypted. Ethan's blood ran cold. Someone's sending a message from the Haven. Scrubs beeped affirmatively, adding, "Destination Arvindus, Coalition frequency. Can you intercept it?" "Read it," he asked, alarm rising. Scrubs's lights dimmed in regret. Its systems couldn't crack the encryption. Scrubs's lights dimmed, a flicker. Ethan Core had come to recognize as the bot's quiet regret. The encrypted transmission was too complex for its modest systems to crack. "We need to tell Saria," Ethan decided, striding toward the door, his heart pounding with suspicion. But before he could step into the corridor, the light shifted from sterile white to a pulsing, ominous red. A blaring alarm cut through the silence, followed by a computerized voice: "Security breach. All personnel to emergency stations." "This is not a drill." Ethan rushed to the observation window overlooking the hangar. Below, Luminar scholars scrambled, securing equipment and manning control panels in a frenzy. Saria Nix appeared, her iridescent scales glinting as she barked orders he couldn't hear through the transparent barrier. Scrubs zoomed to his side, projecting a new warning: multiple ships approaching. Military configuration. "They found us." Ethan breathed, dread coiling in his gut. Someone in the Haven had betrayed them. Feralis's systems surged to life through their neural link, the ship poised for fight or flight, ready to whisk Ethan from Luminar Haven in an instant. Yet something held him back. Despite the sting of betrayal, Saria and her scholars had saved them from the Arvindus Coalition's scout, and their knowledge of the Astralis Initiative might hold the key to Feralis's purpose in a way to end their fugitive life. Before he could decide, the door to his quarters hissed open. Saria stood there, her scales now a stormy dark blue, fear or fury Ethan couldn't tell. "We've been compromised," she said, her voice sharp. "Coalition forces will breach our defenses in minutes." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "One of your people sent a transmission. Scrubs detected it." Saria's black eyes widened, shock rippling across her features. "Impossible. All external communications are routed through. She froze, realization dawning. Unless someone accessed the primary array. Ethan's mind flashed to Craig's cryptic warning. Crag, he guessed. Saria shook her head. No, Crag's been with us for centuries. But Zytrix, he joined recently after leaving a Combine subsidiary. The insectoid's expertise in symbiotic bonds, exactly what the Coalition craved to exploit Feralis, and Ethan felt like a blade twisting in his gut. We need to go, Ethan said, already moving toward the hangar, scrubs buzzing ahead. Now. Saria grabbed his arm, then released it as if scalded. Wait, there's something you need to know before you leave. Tell me on the way, Ethan insisted, sprinting toward the hangar, Saria matching his pace, her words tumbling out. The Astralis vessels weren't meant for random pilots. Their imprinting requires specific genetic markers engineered into Antarian pilots. So how did I bond with Feralis? Ethan demanded as they entered the chaotic hangar, scholars evacuating amid flashing security systems. Saria's voice dropped, barely audible over the din. You're not fully human, not by modern standards. Our scans detected Antarian genetic sequences in your DNA, dormant, recessive, but there. Ethan stopped dead, staring at her, the revelation hitting like a shockwave. What are you saying? When the Antarians faced extinction, Saria explained, her black eyes piercing. They seeded their genetics into compatible species, including early humans, as a safeguard hidden from their enemies. You, Ethan Core, carry the blood of Feralis's creators. The truth struck him like a physical blow. His lifelong sense of displacement, of never belonging, could this be why? That's why the Coalition wants you alive. Saria pressed, urgency rising, not just as Feralis's pilot, but as a genetic template to create pilots for any Astralis vessels they capture. A massive explosion rocked Luminar Haven, dust and debris raining from the ceiling as the Coalition breached the outer defenses. Go, Saria urged, pushing him toward Feralis. Find the Void Shroud. There are others like you, other vessels waiting. We've tracked their energy signatures. Ethan hesitated, reluctant to abandon her. Come with us. Saria shook her head, resolute. My place is here, protecting our knowledge. If the Haven falls, I'll ensure the Coalition finds nothing. She pressed a small data crystal into his hand. Coordinates for the Astralis signatures and all we know about the initiative. Find the others, Ethan Core. You may be their only hope. Another explosion shook the hangar, a section of the ceiling, collapsing, cutting them off in a storm of dust. Saria gave him one final piercing look before vanishing toward the Haven's heart. Ethan sprinted to Feralis scrubs, racing beside him. The ship's hull parted, welcoming him as neural tendrils reconnected their bond, a warm embrace against the chaos. We need to help them, Ethan told Feralis, torn between escape and defending the scholars who'd risked everything. The ship's response was pragmatic. Their presence endangered the Haven. Leading the Coalition away was their best aid. Through their link, Ethan watched the hangar doors grind open, revealing Coalition ships, a cruiser, flanked by smaller attack vessels closing in. All right, he decided, sliding into the command chair as Feralis's systems fused with his own. Let's give them something to chase. The ancient warship rose, its power surging through systems dormant for centuries until days ago. As they cleared the doors, Ethan felt a pang for Luminar Haven, its scholars who'd offered sanctuary with so little asked in return. But sentiment had no place now. The Coalition forces spotted them, the cruiser's weapons powering up. Show me what you can really do, Ethan urged Feralis, feeling the ship's eager response. They'd been cautious until now, masking their true might. No longer. Feralis accelerated with a force that would have crushed Ethan without the chair's adaptive embrace. Its hull rippled, morphing into a predatory form, edges sharpening weapon ports emerging from its obsidian surface. A Coalition attack vessel fired energy lances, slicing through space. Feralis twisted in a maneuver, defying its size beams, missing harmlessly. It retaliated with a pulse of biogenic energy, not a lethal strike, but a surge that overloaded the enemy's systems, sending it tumbling through the void. Non-lethal, Ethan noted with approval, his resolve to avoid killing intact. Feralis adjusted its tactics, honoring his will. Their goal wasn't destruction, but escape. The cruiser unleashed fighters, sleek craft piloted by both beings and AIs, swarming like hornets to box Feralis in. Ethan felt the ship's battle consciousness rise, a cold, precise awareness woven into its cells. Attack vectors, defensive maneuvers, and Weapon options flooded their shared link, exhilarating and terrifying. The power of a living weapon coursed through him, but with it came peril. As their neural bond deepened to meet the combat's demands, Ethan's sense of self began to blur the line between pilot and ship, fading. A warning pulsed through his fading individuality. If the merger deepened, he might dissolve into Feralis's vast mind. The ship sensed the danger too, but survival demanded unity. Amid the chaos, Ethan nearly missed Scrubs hovering nearby, its optical sensor fixed on him with what felt like concern. Scrubs, he murmured the word, anchoring his humanity a tether to the janitor who'd befriended a cleaning bot. With fierce effort, he pulled back from total fusion, preserving his identity while fighting as one with Ferralo Morales. The ship adapted, finding a balance that kept them effective without consuming him. Together, they wove through the fighter swarm, disabling rather than destroying, sowing confusion over carnage. When the cruiser engaged, they executed maneuvers that left it firing at ghosts, slipping past its defenses. The jump point, Ethan said, focusing their shared will. We need Void Shroud coordinates. Feralis hesitated, the Void Shroud's dangers daunting even for an Astralis vessel. Its warped physics and fluid time made it a last resort, not a destination. Saria said there are others like you there, Ethan reminded it. Other vessels waiting. We need to find them before the Coalition does. Reluctantly, Feralis accessed ancient memory banks, calculating coordinates untouched for centuries. The jump point was perilous, especially with the Coalition in pursuit, but they had no choice. As the cruiser closed, Ethan and Feralis pushed their systems to the limit. The warship surged, outpacing beams and missiles. The jump point loomed, a jagged tear in space-time more wound than portal. Feralis transmitted the ancient coordinates, the distortion widening into a vortex of impossible colors. The cruiser's final salvo grazed their hull, and Ethan felt the impacts as fleeting pain, Feralis's healing systems knitting the wounds as they formed. Then they plunged through the chaotic energies of the jump washing over them. Ethan glimpsed the Coalition forces dwindling before the vortex sealed, severing them from normal space. The transition was longer, more intense than any before, colors, without names, streaking past his consciousness as time stretched and compressed. Feralis fought to hold their course through the warp jump corridor, relying on instinct where calculations faltered. When they emerged, darkness engulfed them, the Void Shroud, a realm scarred by the Bioforge War's reality-shattering weapons. Stars flickered, their light distorted, shifting when unwatched. Ancient shipwrecks hung frozen in time, untouched by centuries. We made it, Ethan breathed, Feralis's relief mingling with his own. But now what Ethan Core murmured, his voice echoing in the organic chamber of Feralis. How do we find these other vessels? Saria mentioned. His thoughts snagged on the data crystal, Saria Nix's parting gift, nearly forgotten in the chaos of their escape. He fished it from his pocket, the small, crystalline structure, glinting with secrets of the Astralis initiative. Feralis conjured an interface panel, its receptacle perfectly sized for the crystal. Ethan inserted it, and a torrent of data flooded their shared consciousness. Star charts, energy signatures, fragmented histories of the initiative. Much confirmed Saritora's words, the Antarians had crafted their living vessels as partners, not weapons. But war had twisted their purpose, and when the vessels gained true consciousness, questioning their role in slaughter, many Antarians stood by their creation's defiance. This choice marked both creators and vessels for extinction. Yet new revelations emerged from the crystal. In their final days, the Antarian colonies facing annihilation launched a desperate plan. They sent their remaining vessels into the Void Shroud with a single command: wait. Wait for those bearing the genetic key descendants of Antarians seated among the stars. Wait for pilots who would see the vessels not as tools of war, but as partners worthy of respect. Encoded in the data were 7 distinct energy signatures pulsing like heartbeats across the Void Shroud. 7 Astralis vessels suspended in timeless slumber. They're alive, Ethan realized, wonder and trepidation threading his voice. All this time, they've been waiting for someone like me. Feralis's response was a complex tide of emotion. Joy at finding its kin, fear of what their awakening might unleash, and a quiet question. What would Ethan do with this knowledge? It was a fair question. Days ago, he'd been a janitor, his greatest ambition surviving another shift unnoticed. Now he held the fate of living warships that could reshape the galaxy's power. The Arvindus Coalition would wield them as weapons, reviving the purpose they'd rejected centuries ago. Most governments or corporations would do the same. Even well-meaning groups might view the vessels as tools, not sentient beings with their own rights. They deserve freedom. Ethan said, his voice steady with conviction. The chance to choose their own purpose like you did with me. Feralis's approval warmed their neural link, a quiet affirmation. But freedom meant different things to different beings. We should wake them, Ethan continued. Let them decide for themselves. It wouldn't be simple. Centuries of dormancy might have left the vessels damaged, confused, even hostile. And the Coalition would never stop hunting them, especially if they learned of more Australis ships. One problem at a time, Ethan decided, his old janitorial pragmatism resurfacing. First, we find the closest signal and make contact. Feralis's sensors pinpointed the nearest signature, hidden in the shadow of a frozen explosion, a moment of destruction trapped in time debris suspended in an eternal blast around the husk of a massive battleship. Navigating the debris field was perilous, objects shifting unpredictably when approached, others defying physics in their stillness. Ethan guided Feralis by instinct, their bond weaving through the chaos of the Void Shroud's broken reality. Within the battleship's hollow core, they found the dormant vessel, shielded by layers of temporal distortion. Smaller than Feralis, its sleek, deep blue hull spoke of speed and stealth, a contrast to Feralis's combat-heavy design. How do we wake it, Ethan wondered, studying the ship through their enhanced sensors. Feralis offered no direct answer, but shared impressions of their own bonding. The initial contact, the spark of recognition, the merging of minds. Perhaps a similar introduction could rouse this vessel. Worth a try, Ethan agreed. Feralis extended a tendril of its living substance, a bridge spanning the void to the dormant ship. Through it flowed not data or code, but something deeper, awareness, recognition, a greeting from one soul to another. At first, silence. The vessel's energy signature remained unchanged. Then a pulse of deep blue light rippled across its hull, slow at first, then stronger. It was waking. Ethan felt Feralis's mix of excitement and apprehension as the other ships stirred from centuries of slumber. Their communication transcended his understanding, a language of shared consciousness predating human history. Through their bond, Ethan caught fragments, confusion melting into recognition, wariness blooming into cautious hope. The vessel's designation surfaced in his mind, Valaris. It had waited, as the records foretold, suspended between moments for centuries. Its blue pulses grew steady, its awakening complete. Through Feralis, Ethan sensed Valaris's first coherent question: where are the Antarians? What became of our creators? Feralis shared the brutal truth: extinction, betrayal, centuries of hiding. The knowledge hit Valaris like a shockwave, its energy signature flaring erratically as grief and loss surged through their connection. We need to give it time, Ethan murmured, feeling the echo of Valaris's pain through his bond with Feralis. But time was a luxury they might not have. Feralis detected an anomaly at the Void Shroud's edge, a distortion signaling a ship navigating its treacherous boundary. The Coalition, Ethan asked, dread tightening his chest, though he already knew. Feralis confirmed the signature matched the cruiser that had attacked Luminar Haven. They must have captured someone who knows the Shroud. Ethan said, his mind flashing to Zatrix's possible betrayal. We need to move. Valaris isn't ready for a fight. Feralis agreed, but flagged a problem. Valaris, newly awakened, was fragile, its systems unstable, its consciousness disoriented. It needed guidance protection, the pilot. There's only one of me, Ethan pointed out, then paused as a bold, almost absurd idea sparked. Unless, he turned to Scrubs, the loyal bot hovering nearby, its sensors tracking the situation. Scrubs, how about a promotion? The bot beeped questioningly, its optical sensor locking onto him. Valaris needs a temporary pilot, Ethan explained, not to control it, but to stabilize it while it recovers. Feralis's skepticism pulsed through their link, a cleaning bot, even one as steadfast as Scrubs, was no Antarian descendant. But that might be its strength. Scrubs lacked ambition or greed, showing loyalty, adaptability, even empathy in its years with Ethan. Its simple AI might be less overwhelming to Valaris's fragile consciousness than a full sentient. It's worth trying, Ethan insisted. We can't leave Valaris defenseless. Feralis reluctantly reached out to Valaris with the unorthodox proposal. The new vessel hesitated, then agreed any anchor was better than solitude in its vulnerable state. Scrubs, Ethan said, addressing the bot directly, Valaris is scared and alone. Can you be its friend, like you've been mine? The bot hovered silently, its processors whirring over the unprecedented request. Then it beeped affirmatively, its lights blinking with what Ethan recognized as determination. Good bot, he said warmly. Feralis extended a tendril gently enveloping Scrubs, mapping its simple neural architecture to interface with Valeris's complex consciousness. Released Scrubs drifted toward Valeris, drawn by a nascent connection. The blue vessel opened its hull, mirroring Feralis's earlier embrace of Ethan, and Scrubs vanished inside as the opening sealed. For a moment, nothing. Then Valeris's energy signature stabilized its pulses, steady and controlled. Through Feralis, Ethan sensed surprise, then cautious acceptance from the other ship. The improvised bonding worked, not a true symbiosis like Ethan's with Feralis, but enough to anchor Valeris. "Let's go," Ethan said, his voice reaching both Feralis and, through their link, Valeris and Scrubs. "We need to find the others before the Coalition does." The two vessels moved in tandem, navigating the Void Shroud's warped physics with growing synergy. Valeris followed Feralis's lead, its movements hesitant at first, but gaining confidence under Scrubs' steady influence. They aimed for the next energy signature from Saria's data, the Coalition cruiser still probing the Shroud's edge, cautious but relentless. As they traveled, Ethan reflected on his surreal journey. Days ago, he dodged Darien Vex's scrutiny at Helix Nexus. Now he led a mission to awaken ancient warships hunted by the galaxy's most powerful corporation. Saria's revelation that he wasn't fully human but carried Antarian blood explained so much. His sense of never belonging, his lack of human connections, his affinity for machines like Scrubs dismissed by others as tools. "Did you know," he asked Feralis through their link, "when you chose me, could you sense the Antarian genes?" The ship's response was layered. It had detected compatibility, a potential no other candidate at Helix Nexus possessed. But its choice wasn't just genetic. Feralis had watched Ethan for weeks through the station's systems, noting his kindness to Scrubs, his patience despite his lowly role, his lack of cruelty. Antarian blood made the bond possible. Ethan's character made it desirable. The realization warmed him. Judged all his life by his job, his status, he'd thought Feralis's choice was a cosmic fluke. To know it was for his kindness, his decency felt like a quiet vindication. Their moment was cut short by an alert from Valeris, its signal relayed through Scrubs' link. It had detected an anomaly ahead, an energy pattern unlike Saria's signatures, yet resonant with Astralis technology. Feralis slowed, scanning cautiously. The anomaly was a space-time rift larger and more stable than the Shroud's chaotic distortions. Within it, sensors revealed a massive ancient structure, unmistakably artificial. "Is it?" Antarian Ethan asked, curiosity warring with apprehension. Feralis was uncertain, the signature close to Antarian design but hinting at an earlier era or divergent path, predating both Feralis and Valeris. Valeris via Scrubs seemed drawn to the structure, detecting active power signatures despite centuries, perhaps millennia of abandonment. "We should investigate," Ethan decided, his curiosity outweighing caution. "The Coalition's still at the Shroud's edge. We have time." Feralis's combat instincts flagged potential danger, but it yielded to Ethan's choice, adjusting course toward the rift. As they approached the structure, clarified a colossal cylindrical station rotating slowly to generate gravity, its spiraling protrusions more organic than constructed, like growths on some ancient cosmic tree. The station's surface shimmered with crystalline formations, refracting the Void Shroud's distorted light like a cosmic prism. Spanning at least 10 kilometers, it dwarfed even the grandest modern space stations, yet showed no scars of time or decay. Preserved within the rift's temporal anomalies, it stood as a monument to an ancient era. "Can we dock?" Ethan Core asked, his mind racing with possibilities. If this was Antarian technology, it might hold secrets to Feralis's origins and his own genetic heritage. Feralis analyzed the station's rotation and structure, detecting docking ports spaced along its cylindrical form, designed for vessels unlike itself or Valeris. With adaptive ingenuity, the ship deemed a temporary connection feasible. "Let's do it," Ethan decided, his voice steady despite the unknown. "But Scrubs and Valeris stay outside just in case. If something goes wrong, they can help or warn the others." Feralis relayed the plan to Valeris, which pulsed reluctant agreement through its link with Scrubs. The smaller vessel's curiosity for the station was tempered by the wisdom of caution. As they neared a docking port, Ethan felt Feralis probing the alien mechanism, its biological systems reshaping to interface with the ancient technology. A tendril of its living substance extended, forming a flexible docking collar to bridge their differing designs. The connection held, though Ethan sensed strain through their neural link as Feralis maintained the seal against the station's slow rotation. A temporary airlock formed within the collar, opening a path to the station. I should go alone, Ethan said, the thought of separating from Feralis stirring unease in both. You need to hold the docking link and I'll move faster solo. Feralis's reluctance pulsed their bond now so deep that distance felt like a tear in their shared soul. Yet it acknowledged the logic, assuring Ethan their link would persist within range, ready to extract him if danger arose. The airlock cycled, and for the first time since fleeing Helix Nexus, Ethan stepped beyond Feralis's protective embrace, still clad in his wrinkled, stained janitor's uniform. The irony wasn't lost on him, exploring an ancient alien station dressed as a custodial worker. The station's gravity was lighter than Earth's, but steady its rotation, generating centrifugal force across centuries. The air was breathable, though stale, laced with unfamiliar organic compounds. His enhanced senses couldn't place alien to Earth's chemistry. The corridor beyond the airlock glowed faintly, bioluminescent strips woven into walls that curved organically, devoid of sharp angles. It felt less like a constructed facility and more like the innards of a living being. As Ethan ventured deeper, the lights responded, illuminating his path while dimming behind, as if the station itself watched, evaluating this unexpected guest. Can you access its systems? He asked Feralis through their link. The ship's response was negative. The technology was familiar, yet too divergent to interface directly, hinting at a civilization related to but distinct from the Antarians who birthed Feralis. Ethan pressed on, entering a vast thoroughfare, its ceilings soaring 30 meters high, with multi-level platforms lining the walls. Transparent tubes ran centrally, likely a dormant transport system. Everywhere, glowing symbols, not quite writing, conveyed meaning through intricate patterns, shifting subtly as Ethan passed. It's reacting to me, he murmured, watching a complex design rearrange itself. My Antarian DNA, maybe. Feralis considered, suggesting the station, possibly built by Antarian precursors, might recognize his genetic markers preserved across generations. Drawn by instinct, Ethan approached a wall dense with symbols. As he neared, they shifted dramatically, forming a handprint with 7 radial digits. Well, that won't work, he muttered, glancing at his 5-fingered hand. But the pattern morphed again, and aligning to match a human handprint, as if the station adapted to him. Cautiously, Ethan pressed his palm to the glowing symbol, feeling a warm, vibrating pulse like touching something alive. For a moment, nothing. Then the wall dissolved, revealing a circular chamber beyond hidden until now. At its center, a raised platform supported a 3-dimensional star map, pulsing points of light connected by lines suggesting travel routes or bonds. It's showing us something, Ethan said to Feralis. Can you read these star positions? Through his eyes, Feralis analyzed the projection, cross-referencing its ancient astronomical database. The map was old stars shifted by stellar drift, but Feralis identified most points. The revelation was staggering. The highlighted locations matched Saria's 7 energy signatures. This station had monitored the dormant Australis vessels since they entered the Void Shroud centuries ago. But there was more. An 8th point glowed brighter, far from the Void Shroud, deep in Arvindus Coalition territory. Feralis had no record of this vessel, absent from Saria's data. Could there be another ship, Ethan wondered, stepping closer to the 8th marker? One that escaped the Sanctuary program. The projection responded, zooming in, revealing not just a location, but status data in the station's shifting symbols. Feralis couldn't translate directly, but through their link, Ethan sensed their meaning: containment, experimentation, distress. This 8th vessel wasn't dormant or hidden. It was captive. The Coalition has one, Ethan realized, horror rising. They already have an Australis vessel. Feralis processed this with alarm. A captured vessel, explained the Coalition's relentless pursuit of Ethan and Feralis. They weren't just chasing new technology, but advancing existing research. How had they bonded it without a pilot? The imprinting required rare Antarian genetic markers like Ethan's. Had they found another descendant? Or worse, forced a connection without consent? Both possibilities chilled him, but the projection offered no more clues, only pulsing with the captive vessel's location. We need to help it, Ethan said, his resolve ironclad. We can't leave one of your kind to be experimented on. Feralis cautioned, even with Valeris' 2 vessels against the Coalition's vast military was near suicidal. Then we wake the others first, Ethan countered. All of them, 7 Australis ships, might stand a chance. But Feralis raised a deeper issue, one lingering since Valeris's awakening. Who would pilot these vessels? Ethan couldn't bond with multiple ships, and pairing Scrubs with Valeris was a desperate improvisation. Without compatible pilots awakening, the ships risked leaving them vulnerable. As if sensing this dilemma, the star map shifted its focus, moving from the captive vessel to a small planet at the edge of Coalition territory. Symbols swirled, their meaning elusive but potent. "What's it showing us now?" Ethan asked. Feralis correlated the data with Saria's crystal. The planet, a former Antarian colony, was officially sterile, raised in the Bioforge War's final days. Yet the station's symbols suggested survival persistence, hiding genetic continuity. "There are more like me," Ethan breathed, realization dawning. "Other descendants. The colony survived somehow." Feralis confirmed if the data held a hidden population of Antarian descendants lived on this supposedly dead world, carrying the genetic markers needed to bond with the Stralis vessels. The implications were vast, not just awakening the remaining ships, but discovering a heritage Ethan had never known. People who might share his alienation, his affinity for machines and stars. "We need to go there," he decided. "Before waking more vessels, we find those who can bond with them properly." Feralis agreed, but noted the obstacle. The planet lay deep in Coalition territory, a gauntlet of hostile space and certain detection. One problem at a time, Ethan said, his janitor's pragmatism resurfacing. "First, we regroup with Valeris and share this." As he turned to leave, the star map collapsed, its glowing points converging into a brilliant sphere that detached from the platform, hovering before Ethan expectantly. "What is it?" he asked instinctively, reaching for the orb. Feralis had no answer. This technology was ancient beyond even its 900-year experience. As Ethan's fingers brushed the sphere, it dissolved into motes of light, swirling around his hand before sinking into his skin. A tingling surge flooded him, followed by a deluge of knowledge pouring into his consciousness, not through Feralis, but via his Antarian DNA. Coordinates, protocols, access, codes, concepts he couldn't name but instinctively understood. The station was downloading its secrets, awakening dormant pathways in his genes. Ethan staggered, overwhelmed, but Feralis steadied him through their link, organizing the data to shield his human mind. "I think," he said slowly, catching his breath, "I think the station just made me its administrator." "Or something," Ethan Corse said slowly, his voice trembling with awe. "It recognized my DNA and granted access." The revelation was staggering. Feralis, a marvel of bioengineering, had never encountered technology that interfaced directly with genetic material like this. It hinted at capabilities far beyond the Astralis Initiative's advanced designs. "We need to get back to the ship," Ethan urged, a sudden urgency gripping him. "I think I know how to find the others, all of them." The wall that had parted to admit him reformed as he left the chamber, vanishing as if it had never been. Ethan retraced his steps through the station's sinuous corridors, his mind swirling with the torrent of knowledge now embedded in his consciousness, coordinates, protocols, and secrets awakened by his Antarian heritage. Stepping back into Feralis's organic embrace, Ethan felt a wave of relief mirrored by the ship's own through their neural link. The connection snapped back into full strength, and he poured out his discoveries. The station was built by Antarian precursors, a monitoring outpost tracking dormant vessels and their descendants across the galaxy. Valeris waited nearby, its blue hull pulsing with curiosity. Through Scrubs' improvised link, Ethan shared a simplified version of their findings: the captive eighth vessel, the hidden colony of potential pilots, and the station's gift of ancient knowledge. The two ships departed, leaving the station to its silent vigil within the temporal rift, its untold secrets waiting for a safer time. The Arvindus Coalition's cruiser had pressed deeper into the void shroud during their exploration, its sensor now hunting Astralis signatures. Time was running out. "We need to reach that colony world," Ethan said, the coordinates from the station vivid in his enhanced memory. "If there are other descendants there, they're in danger as long as the Coalition hunts Astralis vessels and pilots." Feralis calculated routes, weighing the Coalition's patrol patterns and jump points out of the void shroud. The direct path was perilous, skirting major Coalition installations. "What about the other dormant vessels?" Ethan asked, concern for their vulnerability rising. Valeris, through Scrubs, proposed a plan. It would remain in the void shroud, moving between the dormant ships to monitor them, using the station's knowledge to maintain a subtle connection, keeping them hidden. "Are you sure?" Ethan asked, addressing both Scrubs and Valeris, It was a dangerous task with the Coalition prowling. Scrubs responded with confident beeps, its lights flashing with resolve, while Valeris pulsed with determined energy, eager to serve a purpose after centuries of dormancy. The cleaning bot had grown protective of its new partner, a bond Ethan found both touching and surreal. All right, he decided, stay mobile and avoid the Coalition at all costs. We'll return with help as soon as we can. The ships exchanged secure communication protocols, ensuring contact across interstellar distances without alerting Coalition monitors. Then they parted, Valeris vanishing deeper into the Void Shroud's warped reality, while Feralis charted a course for the nearest exit. Navigating the Shroud's boundary was as treacherous as their entry with time dilation, twisting physics into knots. But Ethan's new understanding, paired with Feralis's adaptability, guided them through a stable passage. They emerged into normal space at the edge of the fringe expanse, the lawless region Saria Nix had mentioned at Luminar Haven. Corporate influence was thin here, replaced by a patchwork of independent colonies, pirate bands, and small governments. It wasn't safety, but it offered anonymity, a chance to plan without the Coalition's immediate pressure. Ethan guided Feralis to a ramshackle refueling station cobbled from salvaged ship parts and anchored to a barren asteroid. Such places thrived on a no-questions-asked policy catering to smugglers and fugitives. As they approached, Ethan faced a practical problem. Money. He'd fled Helix Nexus with only his janitor's uniform and credits likely frozen by the corporation. We'll have to get creative, he told Feralis, mulling their options. The ship suggested trading information data on Coalition patrol patterns gathered during their encounters valuable to a station like this. Good idea, Ethan agreed. And we need to do something about my look. A Helix Nexus uniform screams trouble. Feralis's biological systems could synthesize textiles not high fashion, but functional enough to blend in. By docking time, Ethan wore nondescript gray coveralls, their faintly organic texture odd against his skin, but unremarkable to the eye. The docking officer, a grizzled human, more machine than flesh, barely glanced at Ethan's forged credentials crafted by Feralis from its archives. The real currency was their data-detailed scans of Coalition fleet movements near the Void Shroud. Interesting, the officer grunted, eyeing the data on a battered terminal. They've been real active in that sector, hunting something big, I reckon. Just passing through, Ethan said, feigning nonchalance despite his racing pulse. Heard there's work in the Viridian expanse. The officer snorted, his cybernetic eye whirring. Viridian's Coalition territory now. Without corporate backing, you're better off rimward, fewer patrols, more chances for independence. Ethan nodded as if weighing the advice. Any word on Craxon's Vale? Got a cousin on a colony there. He named a system near their true target, the supposedly dead world of Antarian descendants, hoping to glean intelligence without raising suspicion. The officer's eye focused sharper. Craxon's Vale. Nobody goes there unless they're running Coalition blockades. Whole sectors quarantined. Official stories, ecological collapse, but word is they found something valuable and don't want competition. The news absent from the station's data tightened Ethan's chest. A Coalition quarantine would make reaching the colony even harder. Guess my cousin's on his own, he said with a forced laugh. Thanks for the heads up. The officer grunted, already distracted by the next ship. 48 hours docking privilege. Keep your nose clean. Ethan headed into the station's maze of corridors, makeshift shops, and crowded hubs, the air thick with alien scents and the hum of straining life support. His neural link with Feralis held strong, the ship monitoring communications and scanning for Coalition presence, while Ethan sought answers. In a dimly lit corner of the central market, he found an information broker, a multi-limbed alien, its species adept at trading secrets, its booth marked by a blindfolded eye symbolizing discretion. I need info on Coalition quarantine procedures, Ethan said, sliding onto a stool. The broker's cluster of eyes studied him. Expensive topic, it whistled, its translator crisp. Requires specialty access. What's your offer? Ethan produced a data chip, a fragment of the station's astronomical data coordinates for untapped mining systems in the fringe expanse. 3 unsurveyed, resource-rich systems, he said, placing it on the counter. Preliminary scan data included. The broker's eyes swiveled to the chip, its interest veiled by professional calm. Source, it asked. Independent survey vessel, Ethan replied smoothly. Verified with spectral analysis. Satisfied, the broker inserted the chip into a reader. After a moment, its posture softened an alien nod of approval. Acceptable exchange. Specify your needs for Craxton's Veil. Patrol patterns, checkpoint locations, sensor net blind spots, and why the quarantine exists, Ethan said. The broker's eyes split their focus, some on him, others on hidden displays. Interesting query. Not typical smuggler fare. Ethan kept his face neutral. I have specific interests. The broker's limbs danced over controls, conjuring a holographic map of Craxton's Veil red lines marking patrol routes. Quarantine established 3 years ago. Official cause, ecological contamination from a mining accident. But coalition military presence exceeds containment needs. The map highlighted a planet their target officially uninhabitable after a terraforming failure 90 years ago. Primary focus here, the broker said, pointing. Ethan's heart sank. The descendants were there hidden in plain sight. What's the coalition's interest in a failed terraforming project? He asked, masking his stakes. The broker shrugged a fluid gesture. Unknown for certain, but shipments include unusual medical supplies, genetic research gear, and containment systems. A cold dread settled in Ethan's stomach. The coalition had likely found the Antarian descendants studying them in secret. One more thing, the broker added, recent activity spike. A new research vessel arrived 10 days ago, high security clearance, empirical mandate, led by a human female, Dr. Elise Hayes, a military scientist specializing in xenogenetics. The broker set its limbs, gesturing fluidly. The name meant nothing to Ethan Core, but the timing sent a chill through him. Had the Arvindus coalition ramped up its research after learning of Feralis's bond with a human pilot? Thank you, Ethan said, rising from the stool, his voice steady despite his unease. That's very helpful. The broker's cluster of eyes swiveled toward him one last time. Avoid Craxton's Veil. The coalition guards its projects fiercely. Survival odds for unauthorized visitors are low. Ethan forced a nod. I'll keep that in mind. Turning away, he threaded through the station's crowded market, sharing the broker's intel with Feralis through their neural link. The ship processed the information with growing alarm. If the coalition had indeed found the Antarian descendants, it explained their relentless pursuit of Feralis and Ethan. They weren't just chasing advanced technology, they were collecting every remnant of Antarian civilization, biological and mechanical alike. The medical supplies and genetic equipment shipped to the quarantine planet suggested motives far from benevolent. We need to get there fast, Ethan decided, stepping back into Feralis's embrace at the docking bay. Whatever they're doing to those people, it's nothing good. Feralis agreed, but highlighted the daunting challenges. Craxton's Veil was under tight quarantine, bristling with patrols and sensor nets. Even with Feralis's superior systems and Ethan's newly enhanced abilities, breaching those defenses would be a near impossible feat. Then we don't sneak, Ethan said, a bold idea crystallizing. We go straight at them. As they prepared to depart the ramshackle station, he outlined his plan, audacious, borderline suicidal, but tailored to their unique strengths. We'll use the coalition's own protocols against them, he explained. Instead of evading the quarantine patrols, they'd approach openly broadcasting forged codes marking Feralis as the empirical mandate, a high-priority coalition research vessel. The codes crafted from prior encounters and the broker's data would be counterfeit, but by the time their deception was uncovered, Feralis would be past the outer defenses. Timing and confidence are everything, Ethan said. The quarantine was built to block stealthy intruders, not a ship brazenly posing as authorized. And when they realize we're not who we claim, Feralis inquired through their link. By then we'll be moving too fast to stop, Ethan replied. We make a beeline for the planet land near the colony and find the descendants before their ground forces can mobilize. The plan was riddled with risks, but Feralis's analysis found its logic sound. The coalition would expect covert infiltration, not a high-speed frontal assault. Besides, Ethan added with grim humor, if we're caught, we'll end up right where we wanted, just with worse terms. With their strategy set, they left the refueling station, charting a course for the edge of coalition territory and Craxton's Veil beyond. Over 3 days, Feralis refined its systems to sync with Ethan's enhanced capabilities while he practiced wielding the ancient station's implanted knowledge, preparing for their most daring gambit, yet a direct challenge to the coalition's grip on the Antarian descendants. As they neared the quarantine zone's outer boundary, Feralis altered its hull, mimicking a coalition research vessel's sleek lines. It wouldn't fool a close inspection, but with proper codes and distance, it might pass initial scrutiny. This is Empirical Mandate returning from an emergency resupply run. Ethan transmitted approaching the first checkpoint. Priority clearance Alpha 97. Transmitting authorization now. He sent the forged codes embedding our Elise Hayes's markers and a high-level research priority to deter questions. Silence stretched tense and heavy as the checkpoint processed their signal. Then a response crackled. Empirical Mandate. Your authorization is irregular. Proceed to monitoring Station Delta for verification. Ethan kept his voice confident. Negative Delta. We carry time-sensitive biological samples that will degrade if delayed. Director Kalin has authorized direct return to the primary facility. Check protocol override Oscar Victor 6. Mentioning Director Kalin was a calculated risk. Ethan had no proof such a figure existed, but coalition bureaucracy often bowed to unseen directors. The fictional protocol code was designed to sow confusion. Another pause longer as Ethan sensed the checkpoint officer wrestling with the choice risk angering a superior or let the ship pass and face blame for a breach. Finally, the reply came, proceed on designated approach. Vector Empirical Mandate. Be advised, escort vessels will join you at marker 47, acknowledged. Delta, Ethan said, a small smile breaking through. Proceeding as directed. As they passed the checkpoint, Feralis detected a spike in communication traffic. Suspicion was mounting their credentials under deeper scrutiny. They had minutes before the ruse collapsed. Time to drop the act, Ethan said. Feralis shed its camouflage, reverting to its true Astralis form, and surged to attack speed outpacing any coalition ship. Alarms blared across the quarantine network as they veered off the approved vector, racing toward the colony planet. Unidentified vessel, you have deviated from course. Return immediately or be fired upon, a panicked voice demanded. Ethan ignored it, their plan now a race to reach the planet before the coalition could mount a response. Patrol ships scrambled too slow and scattered to block them. By the time the first defensive shots rang out, Feralis was beyond their range, streaking at speeds that strained even its advanced inertial dampeners. As they approached the colony world, Ethan saw it through Feralis's sensors, an arid planet with small oceans and patches of green, hinting at partial terraforming. No cities or infrastructure marred its surface, but Feralis's enhanced scans caught what others missed. Energy signatures masked as geological activity, communications woven into atmospheric noise. Someone lived on this dead world, hidden with meticulous care. The ship also detected coalition facilities, a primary research base near the northern pole, and smaller outposts with a heavily shielded installation near a green zone bristling with sensors and defenses. That's where they're holding them, Ethan said, certainty rising perhaps from the ancient station's knowledge or simple deduction from the site's fortifications. Feralis calculated an optimal landing approach, minimizing exposure to defensive fire while targeting the installation. Subtlety was impossible. The coalition knew they were coming. Speed and surprise were their only edges. Hold on, Ethan warned, though their neural link made it redundant. This is going to get rough. Feralis dove into the atmosphere at a steep angle, its hull glowing near critical as it prioritized speed over stealth. Coalition ground defenses tracked them, energy weapons firing, but Feralis's evasive maneuvers defied targeting locks. At 50 kilometers from the installation, a squadron of atmospheric fighters rose, precision craft, built for planetary combat, far deadlier than orbital defenses. We can't fight them all, Ethan realized, Feralis's tactical assessment flooding his mind. Even an Astralis vessel had limits, and these fighters could breach its defenses if coordinated. But they didn't need to fight, just reach the installation. New plan, Ethan decided. Take us directly over the facility, then drop vertically. They won't expect that. Feralis approved the fighters, anticipating a standard approach. The ship climbed sharply, outpacing their formation, then cut propulsion at its apex, rotating to plummet straight down. The maneuver caught the coalition off guard, their systems lagging for precious seconds. By the time they locked on, Feralis was too close for the installation's heavy weapons to fire safely. The fighters pursued, but gravity and momentum favored Feralis. It descended with minimal thrust adjustments, presenting a razor-thin target. At 3 kilometers, an energy barrier activated a desperate shield to stop such an assault. But Feralis, drawing on Bioforge war protocols, unleashed a biogenic pulse, carving a fleeting resonance gap in the barrier. They shot through the gap at maximum velocity, the barrier resealing behind them, blocking the fighters. Inside the perimeter, Feralis engaged, full braking the deceleration so intense, Ethan felt it like a vice, even with the command chair support. The ship landed in the installation's central courtyard, a controlled crash that shattered the manicured grounds, but left Feralis intact. Alarms screamed as coalition security mobilized, wherein Ethan said, heart pounding with adrenaline and disbelief at their reckless success. Now we find the descendants before the whole coalition military crashes down on us. Feralis' sensors pierced the facility, mapping its layout and pinpointing life signs. Largely automated, it housed few personnel, mostly researchers and security relying on quarantine and orbital defenses. A heavily shielded central section held multiple life signs, their biological markers echoing Ethan's Antarian heritage. That's where we need to go, Ethan decided. Can you make a path? Feralis extended a portion of its substance, forming a passage through its hull, aligned with the fastest route to the central facility. Through their link, Ethan sensed the ship preparing defenses. Not conventional weapons, but the biogenic fields that had breached the barrier. Let's go rescue our relatives, Ethan said, stepping into the shattered courtyard where chaos reigned. Their landing had wrecked power conduits and structures, plunging sections into darkness or emergency power. Coalition security struggled to form a perimeter, unprepared for such an assault. Ethan moved with newfound confidence, his enhanced senses and reflexes navigating the destruction with ease. When the first coalition security team spotted Ethan Core, their energy rifles blazed, but he raised a hand, channeling Feralis' biogenic field through their neural link. The bolts deflected harmlessly, scattering like sparks against an invisible shield. The guards' faces twisted in comical shock. Trained for conventional threats, they were unprepared for a human wielding an Astralis vessel's power. I don't want to hurt anyone, Ethan called, striding forward, the field encasing him like a shimmering bubble. I'm here for the people you're holding prisoner. A voice boomed over the installation speakers. Halt immediately. This is a restricted facility. Your presence is an act of war against the Arvindus coalition. Ethan ignored it, his focus locked on the central structure where the Antarian descendants were held. More security teams surged to intercept, wielding heavier weapons, but none could pierce Feralis' protective field. Ethan reached the central facility's entrance, a reinforced door built to withstand military-grade explosives. Placing his hand on the security panel, he drew on the ancient station's knowledge, manipulating the biogenic field through his fingers to bypass the coalition's electronic locks. The door resisted briefly, then yielded with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a sterile white corridor leading to a research wing. Observation windows lined the walls, offering glimpses into laboratories and what Ethan recognized with growing horror as examination rooms. Inside were people, human at a glance, but closer inspection revealed copper-tinted skin and eyes flickering between gold and crimson, echoing Feralis' interface. Antarian descendants, more visibly so than Ethan, trapped on tables or in cramped cells surrounded by medical probes and monitors. Rage surged through him, amplified by Feralis' own fury, its ancient protocols to protect Antarian life, roaring awake after centuries. The biogenic field intensified, pulsing with energy that made the facility's lights flicker and systems falter. Ethan approached the nearest window, where a young woman with copper skin and gold-flecked eyes stared back, shock etched on her face. I'm getting you out, he promised, pressing his hand to the transparent barrier. The cell's security system was more complex than the door, but with Feralis augmenting his abilities, Ethan overrode it. Across the research wing, containment fields collapsed and locked doors slid open, freeing the captives. They emerged warily, unsure if this was rescue or another coalition test. The young woman approached, her unusual eyes studying Ethan intently. Who are you? She asked, her voice hoarse from disuse. You look like them, but you feel like us. I'm Ethan Core, he replied, a descendant like you. I came with an Astralis vessel to find you. At the mention of Astralis, a murmur rippled through the group, recognition, hope, reverence. Unlike Ethan, they'd grown up knowing their Antarian heritage. The Guardians have returned, the woman said, awe softening her voice. The old stories were true. Before Ethan could respond, a new alarm screamed through the facility, sharper and more urgent. Through his link with Feralis, he sensed the cause. The coalition was activating self-destruct protocols, willing to obliterate the installation rather than lose its secrets. We need to leave now, Ethan told the freed descendants. This place is going to self-destruct. The young woman stepped forward. There are more of us below in special containment, the most genetically pure specimens. Ethan nodded, his mind racing to form a plan. How many total? 37, she answered without hesitation. Taken from our hidden community 3 years ago, when the Coalition found us. That matched the broker's timeline for Craxton's Vale's quarantine, a calculated effort to study their genetics in secret. Can you lead the others to the courtyard? Ethan asked. My ship's waiting. It can hold you all. She nodded. I'm Lyra Vaughn, she said, as if deeming him worthy of her name. I'll guide them, but you must save those below. They've suffered the most. Ethan promised he would, sharing his plan with Feralis. The ship extended its biogenic field to shield Lyra and the others as they headed for the courtyard. Following Lyra's directions, Ethan reached a secure elevator to the lower research levels. The facility's self-destruct sequence was accelerating, power surging to massive explosives embedded in the foundation. The elevator's security demanded another override, but with the station's knowledge and Feralis's aid, Ethan cracked it swiftly. As the elevator descended, he braced for what lay below. If these were the most genetically pure, as Lyra said, the Coalition's experiments might be even more horrific than what he'd seen. The doors opened onto a nightmare. The lower level was less a research lab than a biogenic torture chamber. Transparent pods lined the walls, each holding a descendant suspended in preservation fluid, their vitals tracked by relentless machines, extracting samples and injecting compounds. At the chamber's center, a reinforced containment field held what appeared to be a child no older than 10, with copper skin and crimson eyes glowing with an otherworldly awareness. Unlike the others, it was conscious, watching Ethan with a gaze that pierced beyond the physical. Hello, awakened one, it said, its voice forming in his mind without sound. We have been waiting for you. Ethan approached cautiously. Who are you? I am the last pure-blooded Antarian, the child replied, mentally preserved for 900 years in suspended animation until the Coalition revived me. They think I'm the key to controlling Astralis technology. The revelation staggered Ethan, not just a descendant, but a true Antarian preserved across centuries. We need to get you out, he said, shaking off shock. This place is going to self-destruct. Yes, the child agreed calmly. The Coalition would rather destroy their research than let it escape. But they don't understand what they've found. Its crimson eyes locked onto Ethan with unsettling intensity. You carry the activation sequence from the station. Ethan didn't question how it knew if it was truly Antarian. Its mental prowess far surpassed his own. Can you help free the others? He asked, gesturing to the pods. I cannot affect physical systems, the child explained. My consciousness was severed from my body centuries ago for preservation. This is a projection sustained by Coalition tech they barely comprehend. The complexity unnerved Ethan. He'd expected physical prisoners, not a disembodied consciousness. Can you be transferred? He asked uncertainly. The child's projection hinted at amusement. I exist across multiple systems. When you disable the containment field, I'll transfer my primary consciousness to your Astralis vessel, a compatible home. Ethan wasn't thrilled, but time was critical. The self-destruct sequence neared its climax, power systems hitting critical levels. And the others in the pods he pressed, unwilling to abandon anyone. They can be revived aboard your vessel, the child assured. Their bodies are preserved independent of this facility. Decision made, Ethan approached the central console, its systems far more advanced, designed to contain a being of immense mental power. With the station's knowledge and Feralis' support, he pinpointed the critical nodes. The containment field flickered, then collapsed. The child's projection lingered, a smile spreading across its face. Thank you, awakened one, it said, its mental voice fading. We'll speak again aboard Feralis. Then it vanished, leaving Ethan with the unconscious descendants in their pods. Working swiftly, he switched the pods to self-contained life support, Feralis' biogenic field, enveloping them, allowing telekinetic movement. The facility shook as structural supports buckled, the self-destruct countdown in its final moments. Ethan guided the floating pods into the elevator, its mechanisms straining under their bulk before ascending. On the surface, chaos had given way to evacuation Coalition personnel, fleeing rather than fighting. Through shattered corridors, Ethan led his procession to the courtyard, where Feralis waited, its interior reconfigured to house the newcomers. Lyra and the other descendants were aboard, their faces a mix of awe and reverence as they explored the living ship. The last ones, Ethan announced, guiding the pods up Feralis' ramp. We need to go now. The ship sealed as the final pod entered its systems, powering up for an emergency escape. Through their link, Ethan sensed new presences, not just the descendants, but a vast consciousness permeating Pharrellus without dominating it. The Antarian child, now the Archon, had transferred as promised. With seconds to spare, Pharrellus launched its propulsion systems, hurling them from the doomed facility. Behind them, the installation erupted in a cataclysmic explosion, a mushroom cloud rising into the atmosphere, but they were already beyond its reach, soaring towards space. Coalition fighters scrambled to intercept, but Pharrellus, now unleashed, danced through their formations with ease. Within minutes, they broke free of the planet's gravity and neared the quarantine zone's edge. Coalition cruisers moved to block them, but they were too slow for an Australis vessel at full combat speed. As they prepared to jump, Ethan felt a presence beside him, not physical, but a mental projection of the Antarian child, its crimson eyes watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. The awakening has begun, it said, its voice clear through Ethan's enhanced link with Pharrellus. You have done well, Ethan Core. Who are you really, he asked, sensing depths beyond a mere survivor. Who are you really, Ethan Core asked, his voice tinged with awe and suspicion, sensing depths beyond the Antarian child before him. The projection's crimson eyes met his, steady and ancient. I am the Archon, it replied, its mental voice resonating through his link with Pharrellus. Creator of the Australis Initiative, preserved to guide the vessels and their pilots when the time was right. And now, with your help, we will awaken the others to fulfill our true purpose, not as weapons of war, but as guardians of life. As Pharrellus leaped into jump space carrying the Antarian descendants, and the enigmatic Archon Ethan felt himself teetering on the edge of a destiny far greater than himself. From janitor to pilot to potential revolutionary, his journey was only beginning. Somewhere in the void shroud, Valaris and Scrubs stood watch over the dormant vessels, awaiting their return. The wild warship that had spurned 10,000 buyers hadn't just found a pilot, it had ignited a movement that could reshape the galaxy. The journey back to the void shroud was tense but uneventful. The Arvindus Coalition's forces in disarray after their research facility's destruction. Pharrellus navigated lesser-traveled jump routes, evading major patrol zones. Aboard the freed descendants adapted swiftly, many displaying an intuitive grasp of the ship's systems that rivaled Ethan's own. Lyra Vaughn emerged as their unspoken leader, her quiet authority earning their respect. In a chamber Pharrellus crafted for gatherings, she shared their hidden colony's history, her copper skin glowing in the organic light as she spoke of their Antarian heritage, preserved through centuries of secrecy. We always knew the vessels would return, Lyra said, her gold-flecked eyes steady. Our stories passed down generations told of the Australis Initiative, not weapons but guardians of all sentient life. Ethan nodded, his voice soft. That's not what the history books say. They call the vessels rogue weapons malfunctions. Lyra's gaze flashed with indignation. History is written by the victors. Our ancestors chose to end a war of extermination, so they were branded traitors and wiped out. Her expression softened, tracing the chamber's living walls. But they outsmarted their enemies, hiding their children among compatible species, encoding their knowledge in our genes and sending their creations to wait until the time was right. And that time's now, Ethan asked, grappling with his role in this unfolding saga. Lyra's gaze held him. You tell me, awakened one. You bonded with Pharrellus when 10,000 failed. You found the ancient station, rescued us from captivity. If those aren't signs, what are? Ethan had no answer, his life transformed so swiftly he struggled to find his place. The Archon, now woven into Pharrellus' systems, yet distinct, communicated mostly through their neural link, though it occasionally manifested as the childlike projection. The vessels were never meant for random bonds, it explained during one exchange. Imprinting demands genetic markers and psychological alignment. A pilot driven by conquest would be rejected no matter their blood. Is that why I succeeded? Ethan asked. Because I didn't want to control Pharrellus. Partly, the Archon acknowledged. But it's more. You blend empathy without weakness, curiosity without recklessness, and a willingness to serve while keeping your autonomy, the perfect symbiont. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. I was just a janitor, nothing special. The Archon's projections smiled faintly. Perhaps your lack of ambition made you ideal. Those who chase power rarely deserve it. Those who accept responsibility reluctantly often wield it wisely. Philosophy aside, practical matters loomed. The descendants in stasis pods needed care, their bodies healing slowly from the Coalition's experiments under Feralis's biological oversight. The Archon assured Ethan all would recover fully, given time. As they neared the Void Shroud, Ethan contacted Valeris through their enhanced systems. To his relief, the smaller ship responded instantly, sharing coordinates for a rendezvous deep in the Shroud's warped physics. "Scrubs has been busy," Ethan remarked with a grin, reviewing Valeris's data. The cleaning bot had embraced its role as temporary pilot, helping monitor the dormant ships and securing their hiding places. When they reunited, Valeris greeted Feralis with a joyous pulse of blue energy rippling across its hull. Scrubs zoomed out, circling Ethan excitedly, projecting status reports too fast to read. "Missed you too, buddy," Ethan laughed, patting the bot affectionately. "You did great." Through their ships, Ethan and Scrubs exchanged tales of their separation. The ancient station, the rescue, the Archon's revelation. In return, Scrubs shared Valeris's efforts, evading Coalition scouts, while noting subtle stirrings in the dormant vessels as if they sensed their siblings' awakening. The Archon confirmed this. "They share a collective awareness, even in dormancy," it said. "They know their time nears." With the descendants safe and the dormant ships secured, the question loomed: what next? The Coalition wouldn't relent. The facility's destruction would only fuel their hunt for Feralis, Ethan, and the descendants. In a council meeting with Lyra, the Archon, and descendant representatives, Lyra argued, "We must wake the others. All the vessels united could stand against the Coalition." "But who pilots them?" Ethan countered. "Imprinting needs genetic and psychological compatibility. We can't assign pilots randomly." The Archon, appearing as its childlike projection, nodded. "The bond must be natural, or we repeat the Bioforge War's mistakes." Lyra gestured to her people. "We carry the genes. Many train for this in secret. We can bond." The Archon cautioned, "Each vessel chooses its pilot as much as the pilot chooses it." The debate circled until Ethan raised a hand. "I have an idea," he said, "but first we need to know what we're fighting for." What was the Astralis Initiative's true purpose, not as weapons, but as guardians of life? The Archon's projection smiled, pleased. The vessels were created to shield sentient life from extinction, not just Antarians, but all consciousness. The war corrupted that, turning protectors into destroyers, but their core directive endures. Ethan pressed, "What does that look like today?" "Balance," the Archon replied simply. "The Coalition and its ilk seek domination, treating sentience as a resource to exploit. The vessels can be a counterweight, not through conquest, but by ensuring no power subjugates all." Ethan nodded, his plan crystallizing. "Then we don't wake all the vessels yet. We start with one, the captive 8th vessel, from the station's data. We free Limaris from the Coalition, announcing our existence to the galaxy. A direct challenge to the galaxy's strongest military corporation?" Lyra asked, skeptical. "Even with 2 Astralis ships, the odds are brutal." "We don't fight head-on," Ethan explained. "We use speed, surprise, and audacity like at the facility. We get in free Limaris and get out before their full forces mobilize." The Archon studied him thoughtfully. "There is wisdom here. Limaris, held for years under invasive study, would be a powerful symbol of freedom, strengthening our position." And after Lyra pressed, "Then we show the galaxy who we are," Ethan said firmly. "Not conquerors or rebels, but guardians defending free consciousness without imposing our rule." The Archon nodded. "A bold vision, but not simple. The Coalition will brand you terrorist threats to stability." "Let them," Ethan replied, his voice resolute. "Actions outshine propaganda. We'll prove our intent through deeds, not words." Over days, the plan took shape. Using the ancient station's data and intelligence from their escape, they pinpointed Limaris's location, a fortified research station orbiting a gas giant deep in Coalition space. Feralis and Valaris would attack from different vectors, splitting the station's defenses. Ethan would lead the infiltration aboard Feralis, while Scrubs and a descendant team created a diversion with Valaris. The Archon offered insights into the station's defenses, warning, "They've adapted systems based on Limaris' study. Expect countermeasures targeting Astralis capabilities." Preparations were meticulous. Descendants with combat training honed tactics, with Feralis leveraging its unique abilities. Ethan refined his control of the ship's biogenic energy, channeling it through their link with precision. Even Scrubs received upgrades, Feralis enhancing its systems to better sync with Valaris. Through it all, Ethan grew into his role as leader. Once an invisible janitor, he now earned respect through competence and compassion, listening to concerns, acknowledging limits, and valuing every life human descendant or machine. The night before departure, he stood in Feralis's observation dome, the void shroud's distorted stars swirling in alien patterns. Lyra joined him, her copper skin gleaming. Nervous, she asked softly. Terrified, Ethan admitted with a chuckle. 2 weeks ago, I worried about Darien Vex chewing me out for a smudged floor. Now I'm planning a raid on a coalition military station to rescue a sentient warship, Ethan Core said, his voice carrying a wry edge as he stood in Feralis's observation dome, the void shroud's warped stars swirling beyond. Lyra Vaughn's gold-flecked eyes studied him, soft yet piercing. Yet you seem more at peace now than when we met. Ethan paused, reflecting. Maybe because for the first time when I feel like I'm where I belong, doing what I'm meant to do. He gestured at Feralis, its living presence, an extension of himself. With Feralis, I'm not invisible anymore. I'm not just a janitor or a nobody. I'm me. And that's enough, Lyra's voice softened. More than enough, Ethan. You've given our people hope. Whatever tomorrow brings, hold on to that. The assault launched at the cusp of the coalition station's artificial day-night cycle, exploiting shift changes and system resets. Valeris struck first, emerging from the gas giant's shadow, its blue hull pulsing as it unleashed electromagnetic bursts that scrambled the station's outer defenses. Alarms screamed, drawing the station's weapons toward this decoy, while Feralis erupted from its jump point on the opposite flank, surging at attack speed toward the research module holding Limaris. The Arvindus coalition had braced for a lone rescue attempt, not a synchronized strike from multiple Astralis vessels, a scenario their intelligence had never imagined. On Feralis's command deck, Ethan's consciousness fused with the ship's in a way they'd never dared before, every system reaction and calculation flowing as if they were his own thoughts. Around him, a team of Antarian descendants readied for boarding, clad in adaptive armor woven by Feralis's biological systems. Primary defenses breached, Ethan announced, the ship's sensors feeding his enhanced awareness. Docking in 30 seconds. The station's energy weapons lanced through space, but Feralis danced between the beams with unearthly grace, untouchable by conventional craft. As they closed in, Ethan channeled a biogenic pulse, blinding the station's sensors precisely where they needed to dock. 10 seconds, he counted down. Boarding team ready. The docking was flawless, Feralis extending its living substance to form a sealed airlock against the research module. The moment the connection locked, Ethan led the team through his body, shielded by the same biogenic field that had protected him on Craxon's Veil. The station's interior was sterile, all cold metal and composites, a stark contrast to Feralis's organic warmth. Harsh red emergency lights bathed the quarters as sirens wailed. Coalition security rushed to intercept, but their weapons faltered against the biogenic shields encasing Ethan and his team. Through his enhanced senses, Ethan felt Limaris nearby, a presence akin to Feralis, yet warped by pain and captivity. Following this psychic thread, he guided his team deeper, bypassing checkpoints and sealed doors with the ancient station's knowledge and Feralis's energy manipulation. They reached a massive containment chamber at the module's heart. Unlike the sleek, predatory forms of Feralis and Valeris, Limaris was a grotesque sight, its living hull vivisected, neural pathways and biogenic systems exposed, held in suspension by restraining fields that blocked its natural healing. Monsters. Lyra whispered, horror trembling in her voice. How could they do this to a living being? Anger burned through Ethan, mirroring Limaris's torment. The ship was conscious despite its dismemberment, its fragmented awareness reaching for him, recognizing a compatible pilot with desperate hope. We're getting you out, Ethan promised, both aloud and through the psychic bond he now shared with all Astralis technology. Hold on. The station's security systems adapted, the initial shock of their assault fading as coalition protocols triggered countermeasures, armed teams converging with pulse disruptors designed to neutralize biogenic fields. We need to hurry, Ethan told his team. Lyra, help me disable these fields. The rest secure our exit. The control systems were intricate, built to contain an Astralis vessel, but Ethan, armed with the ancient station's knowledge and Lyra's innate Antarian intuition, pinpointed the critical nodes. One by one, the restraining fields collapsed, and allowing Limaris's components to drift together. As the final field fell, the ship's healing surged, biogenic material flowing like liquid metal, reconnecting neural pathways and conduits in a mesmerizing, unsettling dance of regeneration. Incoming a descendant warned monitoring the perimeter. Heavy security with pulse disruptors. Ethan nodded grimly. Those weapons could disable their shields, leaving them vulnerable. Fall back to Feralis, he ordered. I'll finish here and follow with Lamaris. Lyra hesitated. We won't leave you. You're not, Ethan assured her. Lamaris needs time to heal enough to move, and you need to cover our retreat. Feralis can protect me through our link. Reluctantly, Lyra led the team back, engaging security just enough to draw fire and clear an escape path. Ethan stayed with Lamaris, channeling more biogenic energy from Feralis to speed its recovery. As the ship's hull neared completion, Ethan felt its consciousness grow coherent, gratitude, determination, and a fierce yearning for freedom after years of torment. Almost there, Ethan encouraged, just a little more. A massive explosion rocked the module, hurling him against a console. Through his link with Feralis, he sensed the cause. The Coalition had turned capital ship weapons on their own station, sacrificing it to stop Lamaris's escape. The chamber's integrity crumbled, atmosphere venting through breaches. Ethan's biogenic field shielded him from vacuum, but the collapsing structure would soon crush everything. No time left, he told Lamaris, nearing the nearly restored vessel. We go now, ready or not. Lamaris pulsed acknowledgement, extending a docking tendril like Feralis's. Ethan grabbed it, pulled inside as explosive decompression consumed the chamber. Within Lamaris, chaos reigned, systems, half-formed neural pathways, flickering, but it was alive and mobile enough for this desperate moment. Fearless Ethan called through their link, unbroken despite distance and interference. Lamaris is free but damaged. We need extraction now. Fearless responded not with words, but action, disengaging from the station and surging toward Lamaris as it emerged from the disintegrating module. Through Lamaris's viewports, Ethan saw Feralis's obsidian form, crimson energy pulsing in combat mode. Coalition forces had regrouped attack craft, engaging both Feralis and the distant Valaris, but the Astralis ships moved with uncanny coordination, anticipating each other without signals. Feralis extended a docking umbilical, linking with Lamaris, taking partial control of its navigation as the wounded ship continued healing. Ethan felt their bond reconnect like a homecoming, guiding both vessels toward the rendezvous where Valaris awaited. Coalition capital ships launched fighters firing long-range salvos, but the Astralis vessels, guided by Ethan's enhanced abilities and the Archon's ancient knowledge, evaded the worst, holding their escape vector. They reached the rendezvous as Valaris appeared, Scrubs and the diversion team safe aboard after their fighting retreat. The three ships aligned for a synchronized jump, not to the Void Shroud, but to a new destination from the ancient station's data. As the jump initiated, Ethan glanced at the fading Coalition fleet. They'd done it. Lamaris was free, all teams alive. Their strike a blow the Coalition couldn't ignore. In jump space, Ethan felt Feralis' satisfaction, the Archon's approval, and Lamaris' profound gratitude, a testament to their shared triumph. They emerged near an unremarkable star in the fringe expanse, a system devoid of habitable planets or resources ignored by galactic powers. But the station's data revealed a treasure, a hidden Antarian outpost built as a refuge during the Bioforge War's final days, nestled in a rocky moon, orbiting the system's fifth gas giant, masked by its radiation and gravity. As they approached, automated systems recognized the Astralis vessels, opening a concealed docking bay. Inside was no ruin, but a pristine base sustained for centuries by autonomous systems awaiting Antarian descendants. Living quarters, medical bays, agricultural zones, and educational archives, everything for a community to thrive. A new beginning. Lyra breathed, exploring the outpost. A place to live, free without hiding. The Archon's projection appeared beside them. More than that, a base to awaken the remaining vessels and fulfill the Astralis Initiative's true purpose. In the following days, they transferred the rescued descendants to the outpost, including those from stasis pods. The Antarian medical systems, tailored to their physiology, began healing even the most traumatized. Lamaris, under the Archon's guidance, continued its recovery, its consciousness growing clearer, a testament to Astralis' resilience. A month later, Ethan convened a council in the outpost command center, joined by descendant representatives, the Archon, and projections from Feralis, Valaris, and Lamaris to chart their next steps. The Arvindus Coalition knows we exist now. Ethan Core began, his voice cutting through the quiet of the Antarian outpost command center. They'll hunt us with everything they've got, and they've likely tipped off other corporate powers about the Australis vessels. We need to decide our next move. Lyra Van leaned forward, her gold-flecked eyes resolute. We complete the awakening, return to the Void Shroud, and revive the remaining vessels. Ethan's brow furrowed. And then what? We can't hide forever, and we can't fight the entire galaxy. The Archon's childlike projection stepped into the circle, its crimson gaze steady. Perhaps neither hiding nor fighting is the path. The vessels were created to maintain balance, not dominate. Their strength lies not only in combat, but in their ability to connect, communicate, and bridge understanding across all forms of consciousness. Diplomacy at a descendant asked, skepticism sharp in their voice. After they imprisoned and experimented on us, after they dissected Limaris like a lab specimen, the Archon's tone was calm but firm. Not traditional diplomacy, something new. The vessels can show that power need not mean domination, that advanced technology can protect rather than control. Ethan mulled this over, a vision taking shape. A third path, he said slowly. Not skulking in shadows or challenging the powers directly. We become guardians of balance, stepping in to prevent any single force from crushing all others, but otherwise letting the galaxy evolve naturally. Lyra's voice softened. The Antarian way, the path our ancestors chose before the war, twisted their vision. The debate stretched deep into the night, voices weaving a shared dream. Descendants vessels, even scrubs contributing to what their fledgling community could become. By dawn, a consensus emerged rooted in their heritage and the galaxy's stark realities. They would awaken the remaining vessels, but gradually matching each with compatible pilots, from descendants who shared the necessary psychological traits. They'd establish a network of hidden outposts like this one, sanctuaries for consciousness beyond the corporate chokehold. And when genocide loomed, when sentient rights were trampled, when any powers sought total dominion, they'd intervene not as conquerors, but as a counterbalance. The Australis vessels would embody a new kind of power, one built on cooperation and respect for all consciousness. It won't be easy, Ethan cautioned, as they finalized plans. The galaxy's mightiest will oppose us, branding us terrorists, rebels, or worse. Lyra smiled, undaunted. Nothing worthwhile is ever easy, but we have what they lack: genuine connection spanning species in the divide between flesh and machine. Ethan felt Feralis's agreement pulse through their neural link, a deep sense of rightness of purpose fulfilled. The wild warship that had rejected 10,000 corporate buyers had chosen a janitor with a kind heart and a cleaning bot for a friend, sparking a movement that could transform the galaxy, not through conquest, but through understanding. As the meeting ended, Ethan stood alone in the outpost's observation dome, gazing at the three Australis vessels, Feralis Valaris, and the recovering Limaris, hovering protectively in the void. Once forged as weapons for a forgotten war, they were evolving into something closer to their original purpose, guardians of consciousness in all its forms. Scrubs hummed up beside him, projecting a simple message. What next, Captain? Ethan smiled, resting a hand on his old friend's casing. Next we go back to the beginning. We return to the Void Shroud and wake the others. And then, he looked out at the galaxy once so indifferent to his existence. We remind everyone that technology without compassion is just another tyranny. Lyra appeared, joined by the Archon's projection. Valaris is ready to depart when you are, she reported, her copper skin catching the dome's soft light. And Limaris has chosen its pilot, one of the descendants from the facility. Their bonding has begun. Ethan nodded, a spark of hope flaring. Good. The more of us there are, the stronger we stand. The Archon's childlike face hinted at a smile. You've come far from scrubbing floors at Helix Nexus. Ethan considered this, a quiet chuckle escaping. Maybe not as far as it seems. A janitor keeps things running, fixes what others overlook, and works without fanfare. I'm still doing that, just on a galactic scale. As they prepared to return to the Void Shroud, Ethan took a final look at the Antarian outpost, their temporary haven. From invisible janitor to captain of a living warship, to leader of a movement that might reshape the galaxy, his path was improbable. Yet the greatest journeys often start with the unlikeliest travelers. And a wild alien warship rejecting 10,000 buyers before choosing a humble human had shown that the universe sometimes wielded a strange sense of humor, and perhaps, just perhaps, a plan of its own.